Welcome to a very special Act on This.tv feature that I am calling Doing Time with the cast and crew of Time, BBC One's smash hit prison drama starring Stephen Graham, Hannah Walters, Sean Bean and a whole host of incredible actors. Today I am joined by director of this piece, Lewis Arnold, Lewis's right-hand man, editor of Time, Sacha Szwarc, exec producer Tom Sherry, two stars of the show, James Nelson-Joyce and Jonathan Harden, and we may even have Stephen Graham and Hannah swinging by as well. Good afternoon, everybody. How are we doing?
Good.
Well, yeah, good.
I love how you're my right hand, Sacha. I'd love to know. I'd love to know who my left hand is.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a mystery.
It is, absolutely. Well, Sacha works with you on practically everything, and everything you two seem to do turns to gold, right?
I mean, Sacha carries me. I think he's the Tom on about this. Sacha carries me through an edit, basically. I don't think he's my hands. I think he's my sort of heart, soul, muscles, everything.
It's a joint effort all the way, and it's a team effort.
Absolute dream team.
It's also worth noting it isn't just carrying Lewis. It's incredibly supportive to everybody. Jimmy would be the first to say this. That having Sacha there was a big help for him. It was an enormous help for us. I think it's a role that perhaps isn't understood by a lot of people. How much creative input comes from the editor.
I mean, I remember the interview for the job. Jimmy just wanted to talk about the editor and Sacha. He just saw Des and he was like, I want it to be like Des in terms of the pace and the editing. And we just spent about an hour talking about Sacha, I think. So it's a good thing you did the job in the end. Otherwise, I might have got fired.
Sacha, you are the golden child. I mean, as we're recording this chat, guys, right? Episode 3 of Time, this incredible drama, is just days away from airing. I know people might have already binged it on BBC iPlayer. It's going to be going out live though, Ep 3 on Sunday night, the 20th of June. Remarkably though, and this goes back to what you were saying about Des, everything that you guys seem to work on before it's even finished airing, right? Time has already officially become the BBC's biggest drama of 2021 so far, with well over 8 million viewers in the first 7 days of episode 1 airing. I mean, so first of all, just kind of congrats. How does that feel? And were you expecting it?
I think we were already proud. I think even before we got into the edit, I think we all, Jonathan and James and Tom, obviously are on the floor, quite a lot. I think we all felt we'd made something we were proud of, and we didn't. I mean, made something we were proud of, but also I think something we enjoyed creatively and professionally, but also, the relationships we formed. I don't particularly care about viewing figures. Tom might obviously feel very differently about that. I think for me, I gauge projects based on the reactions from peers and the cast. This whole cast, I would work again with in a heartbeat and have a relationship with them now, which is beyond work, where, I trust them and I enjoy working with them. But for me, this has been the maddest reception. It's bigger than, for me personally. I mean, my phone's still going off with calls, emails, tweets, texts from people that have seen it, that have responded. And I don't think I ever quite expected it to have the reach that it quite has had and the response it's had. I think I found that quite touching and quite mad, really. But I think you hope for these things, but you can never second guess.
I remember talking to you about it before. Oh, go on, Tom.
I was just going to say that, viewing figures, does it matter? You say, does it matter for me? The most important thing is that there are that many people out there that have seen it. And I think whenever you develop something or you create something, it's about the sharing of the process that with other people. If you just did it in isolation, just for yourself, it's diminished by that. If you can share it with more people, then the joy expands. That's the beauty of hitting a big audience.
Yeah, definitely. And does it put more pressure on you, Lewis, with everything that you do? I know you're making something else now. You're like, holy shit, I've got to make this bigger than the last thing.
Yeah, it really, it does. But I think I'd put that pressure on myself anyway. I'd love to know how James and Jonathan have found it, because obviously being in it, it's a different experience for me because my face isn't in it. Whereas I'm guessing James, I read an interview with James this morning from iTalk Telly where you were saying that you went to your boxing gym and people are like going, oh, you horrible bully and stuff. So I'd love to how you guys have found the response, because we haven't caught up properly for a while.
Yeah, it's been a bit nuts. I I went in the gym, and as soon as I went in there, they were all like, "You bully, you this, that, and the other." And I was like, "Ah." And you should have went to the gym. So the reception's been nuts, and a lot of people forget that it's a drama, it's not real, and it's not based on a true story. And because everyone straight away is putting themselves as Sean, that's the character they're rooting for. Everyone else around it, no matter what they do to Sean or what they do for Sean, I've got that judgment on it. So it is one of them, and because they've been able to watch all three on the iPlayer, they're engrossed in the storyline straight away. So I don't know. I don't really know how to take it. I find it all a bit weird. I just enjoy doing the job. And then if people have loved it, that's the most important thing. But
it's worth saying that James is one of the loveliest human beings ever. And like, people on set were scared to go up to him because he's that good an actor that I think he makes you scared. Like, I saw him in Little Boy Blue and thought he was outstanding in that. And the first conversation I had with him is like, I was nervous because of how authentic his characters are, but he's the loveliest, warmest individual you'll ever meet. But yeah, people are nervous of him because he plays his incredibly real, authentic. I don't want to call them villains because I don't think they necessarily are, but these characters who are quite frightening. But,
what's so good about the dynamic as well between Jono, and that's the character that James plays for everyone who's reminded of names and stuff, and Mark, Sean Bean's character. When I find an actor can play terrifying really well, which you can, James, like you're really good at like being, really scary, basically, and you couple them with an actor who can play terrified or scared, because sometimes you'll get someone who is great at playing terrifying, but if the actor opposite them cannot play the victim, it's not as impactful. But with you guys, like the dynamic that you had, and then like editing wise, Sacha, the grade, the music, the score, how you put all that together in those scenes where you guys are interacting with each other. I don't want to spoil any of the story. Massively impactful.
Forget it. Let's just say right now, this is a spoiler podcast. So we are going to talk about things that happen in the show. Because if you haven't seen it, you have to watch it before watching this. Let's clear that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we can't talk. Otherwise, we can't talk about Jonathan's beautiful scene later. So exactly. Let's just say right now, don't watch this until you've watched all three.
Right, definitely. So so when you see, there's scenes in there that, like episode 1, haunting, where Jono runs in, throws boiling water out of a kettle and sugar over this guy's face. The way that was shot and the way that you edited that together, because you don't see it graphically necessarily, but you hear the screams. Don't know if that was like ADR'd in or what. It's just absolutely haunting. And like straight away, you're like, oh my God, this guy is like not to be messed with at all. I mean, like how was it putting those scenes together so that they had the biggest impact?
The hilarious thing was, I remember, Sacha, we added ADR for James to do. When Mark goes to the door, we added ADR, and we showed it Neil Maskell, who's a good friend of mine, and he was one of the first people to see it that was beyond me, Tom, and the core group. Just showed it him as a natural response to someone that had not read the scripts. And he came back to us, and one of his main notes was, the lad that plays Jono is terrifying. Stop giving him ADR to make him terrifying. He is frightening. So we cut it all out, didn't we, Sacha? We were like, he's totally right. But we'd become so used to James that we were sort of like maybe pushing it further than it needed to be pushed. But James only has to do subtle things, and you're in.
Absolutely. Jonathan, how's the response been for you, mate? You play a incredible character, Brendan, in this. How's the reception been for you?
Mental, because I'm not used to getting much of a response to things I do. Like I've kind of made a career of sorts out of being a day player on things, and I've had loads of small parts and big things. And my mum, for example, will ask me first when I get a part, "Do you die in it?" And then my brother will ask me, "But are you actually in it? Like, am I going to see you in it?" So I kind of feel a bit like an extra as far as my family and friends are concerned, because it's always just a bit of a disappointment for them when something's actually on. So this was great because like I hadn't had that many messages about something, and from people from school. I left school in 1998, and people I went to school with and haven't spoken to since were getting in touch, and people, actors I'd never met and stuff like that. It's just weird. So the whole thing's been totally different for me than anything else. Sometimes I've done things and thought this would, like, oh, people will really like this, and then they haven't. And I think that's the experience on probably most of the things I've done. You're in something and you think it's going to be brilliant because that's the headspace you're in. You've committed 100% to being in it, and you're putting your heart and soul into it. And then there's so much happens afterwards, like the edit and all the post stuff, that what you do on the days is actually such a tiny part of that big thing that you can never, as an actor, A, you're not in control. It's not really our medium. And B, you can never really know what's going to happen beyond that point. So I've seen people on set be really awful, and then after an edit go, holy fuck, they're amazing.
Yeah.
And I've seen people be amazing, and then in an edit go, oh, that's pretty awful. So this has been amazing because obviously I felt like it was class at the time, and it was Jimmy and it was Lewis, and it's matched that and surpassed it, which is actually, in terms of my career, I hate to say this and no disrespect to anybody I've worked with, but it's the first time it's happened to that level where it's kind of met and surpassed expectations.
I mean, yep. Jonathan, you probably don't know this, but I mean, Tom fought and the team fought very, episode 3 is over length.
Over time?
It was over time.
Yeah.
And Jimmy had always been promised that not to worry about length because, the BBC believed in Piers and Tom believed in the scripts. But we did have to really sort of justify the episode. And, the easiest thing in that episode would have been to take Brendan's story out, and then it's on length. And
shit.
I think it's testimony to Jonathan's performance and Jimmy's writing that actually what happened was we kind of said, no, this is part of what makes this show so special, is these characters that come in and out, and you get glimpses into the lives of these other prisoners. It's not just Mark's story. And I think if we hadn't had a performance like Jonathan's, it would have been easier to take that out. But we and Tom fought really hard to keep those things in and to push the channel to see if they would sort of give us more time. So, it could have been a very difficult situation.
I wasn't even aware of that. Tom, how does that even work when you go, that's over, but we still want it?
I mean, it's a negotiation. And actually, as Lewis says, it's the performance that made it easier for us because... the episode wouldn't have been as good if we didn't have those scenes in. And I think that when you're trying to make something as good as it can possibly be, and that is ultimately what all of us are striving for, you can't then have some random diktat imposed upon it that makes it less good. And so, it's incumbent on everybody involved to make it as good as it can be, but then you fight to make sure that that's the version that people see. And I all credit to the BBC for agreeing with us to shift the news. I mean, shifting the news at 10, it's in the title. It's at 10, and it won't be at 10. It'll be at 10 past 10. And somebody hasn't died. This isn't something that they didn't expect. This is they know about it months in advance, and yet they still back the version that we want to show enough that they are prepared to move the news, and that's a brilliant reflection on what has been delivered from everybody.
Yeah, that's incredible. And just as an actor, Jonathan, like, man, you can't. How gutted would you be? I've been in things and I've had scenes cut, but not scenes like yours. You'd be absolutely devastated.
I've been tempted to ask for footage so many times when I've actually went to the cinema once to watch like a cast and crew screening. Thankfully it wasn't a premiere of something, and they'd forgotten to tell me it'd been totally cut. It was exactly that. It was like a narrative that was easily just ripped out, and the director was walking back up the center aisle of the cinema past us, and just as he had clocked me, he thought you could see him go, oh, I meant to tell him about that. And I was kind of halfway down the seat like, I'm so embarrassed. But yeah, it's like, it would have been absolutely gutting because I'd told people I was in it, and it wouldn't be the first time, but had to say, well, it was, but I'm not anymore. So.
I would go further than that to say it'd be gutting, not because you'd told people that you're in it, but because you knew what you delivered on the day. And I think that seeing what you delivered on the day actually is what changes, whether it's included or not. And I think all of the actors in the piece, to some extent, Jimmy writes in little vignettes, and Sacha will be able to say that it is possible to show the story without some of those vignettes, those little sequences, and yet on every occasion there's no way you can't have that included because of the quality of what has been delivered by the performance.
There's something I should say from an actor's perspective, and I don't know if this is the same for James. I suspect it is. That's why I'm saying it. But I'm not entirely sure I could have delivered something as good as maybe what I feel like I delivered on the day if it hadn't been for Lewis. And like, he told me not to say this on the day. He said, "Don't tell anybody I work like this." But because we had a bit of spare time that day, the coverage in that last scene that I do is kind of insane, the amount of shots that there are on me, because I think we had time. And it could have been a different set of circumstances. It could have been that Lewis was against the wall and he might have just been getting bare bones coverage, and that would have been it. But it was really glorious because we had loads of coverage. But Lewis had kind of boosted my confidence from the second that I sent the tape, from when I got a part to then arriving on set. He was always there to go, "Well done," or, you know, "It's great you're doing it," or "You're doing great work," or "I showed it to Sacha, what you did the other day, and it's great," or like always really, really positive. And sometimes internally you're thinking, he's just saying that. He's just saying that. And sometimes he might be just saying that, but equally you still need to hear it. And on that day, I think in my inexperience in a way, I got emotional weight. In the rehearsal, I started to break down, and I wasn't expecting to. And I had to say to Lewis, I think, "Can we go to my close-up after about 2 shots?" And he did. And it wasn't the plan. And they basically turned around to go on my close-up to then backtrack and go to the other side again, which is gloriously generous, and also part of somebody who understands how actors work. Because maybe had we not had the time, and maybe had Lewis not been in tune with that, then I probably would have been doing man attempting to cry on screen.
Well, that's it. So you feel you're emotionally ready after the first couple of shots. So you're like, actually, can we do my close up now so I can get this out?
We actually. I mean, the reality there is, I think we asked you where you wanted us to start, and I think you said not on the close up, and then we
changed my mind.
No, you didn't change your mind. It's just we then set up and we're shooting behind you, and then I remember you basically said, "Oh, actually, shit, it's here." And you know, you have to, like the scene. The most important thing about the scene is the performance, and so you kind of go, fine. You can't predict. Like, I can't cry. I really I struggle with that emotion. So to be an actor that has to find something, you can't just find it on cue every time. So we have to adapt, I suppose, and we have to allow ourselves opportunities to change a plan if it means that we could. There's nothing worse than you guys finding it. I mean, I don't like rehearsing overly, and all the fight stuff we did with James, we didn't really rehearse too much. We block it, because if they nail it, like, there's no worse feeling than knowing you got it on a shot that wasn't on you, and then in your head you're trying to chase that reaction, chase those feelings. You're just distracted. You're not in it anymore.
Yeah. It's a really good example, actually, that people often ask what makes a good director. A good director is the one that has it in his head, or her head, in advance, how much time something deserves, and making sure that when you get to that point, that there is enough time for that. All too often you see that we've run out of time, and you're describing, that might have happened. It wasn't going to happen on this because you've got a really good director who knows how much time that deserves, and being flexible on the day and making sure that you haven't run out of time, and you are giving people the opportunity to deliver their performance. That is what makes a good director, making you feel like you've got.
Yeah. And just to say, I always run out of time, so I'm not a good. I mean, like, inevitably, I think on every job you have days where you are up against it, but you always try.
But you never felt that. No. I never felt like there was never. You created this world where, like, you'd go into makeup and everyone was relaxed and comfortable and having a laugh. Then you'd go and talk to sound, and it was just an environment where there was no pressure. Like, sometimes it is nerve-wracking to go onto set when you know you've got to get something for that day, and there was never once that thing where you feel like everyone's judging you or waiting for you to get it. It was like, it was like exploring. There wasn't that pressure, and I think that's Lewis's strongest quality, is like everyone around is in a zone where it's like we're all in this together. It's not like, let's look at our watches and get home for the food. It's like we're creating something special. And that was the beauty of the job, I think, because we've all walked away and before it's even come out, went, that was a special time. Even if no one likes the job, it was a special time to work.
Yeah. Well, let's dive.
And there is a real truth in it, a real truth in that it does feel like that on set. And yet I can promise you the schedule that Lewis was operating in was punishing. And you know, and on a with COVID as well, you know, in a way that made the inflexibility, almost impossible to get your head around. So to be able to give the impression to everybody in the environment that you've got all the time in the world, when genuinely he didn't, is remarkable.
Nice.
Yeah, let's move on. I feel really awkward.
Everyone's just praising Lewis.
It feels like it's
Apparently he's terrible at football, so there's something.
he's got an awful personality as well. Let's dive into the process then, right? So I put a post out in the Acts on This Facebook group yesterday. There's 10,000 actors in there. Loads of people have submitted questions. I've tried to kind of break it down into segments, like into sort of like themes, really. A lot of questions came in around the preparation and the process. Obviously, our audience who are going to be watching this, they're mainly going to be actors. They want to learn from you guys what it was like to work with Lewis, your prep as, and process as actors, Jonathan and James, and just sort of like, just making sure that when you get on set, you are ready. Sacha, you said something to me. I've got a quote here. You said, and you back this up as well, Lewis. Sacha said, you can't be in the moment if you haven't done the work. And Sacha, you even said in the edit sometimes, you can see it in actors' eyes when they haven't got the most basic stuff down, like they just don't know their lines inside out. For actors who are, going onto a set and working with you, Lewis, and they're playing the kind of roles, those day player roles you spoke about, Jonathan, these are the roles that you guys play are a bit bigger than that. But in terms of your prep, and when you're working with the likes of Stephen Graham and Sean Bean and these massive, massive names, like what can you take us through individually your process, like your prep for like attacking this project? Whoever wants to go first.
Go on,
Jonathan. Jonathan. You go first.
Am I allowed to curse in this?
Of course you can.
Yeah,
absolutely.
My first ever film I did years ago, 2008, was called 5 Minutes of Heaven, with a director called Oliver Hirschbiegel, and it was written by Guy Hibbert. And I had like 6 scenes. And the first one I filmed, I walked on, and it was a real like nothing line, like they're ready for you now or something. But it didn't say it as scripted ever. And Oliver eventually lost his shit with me and just said, "Learn your fucking lines." And honest to God, that to me was the moment at which I went, oh yeah, this is actually a fucking job. Like people have competed to get here, and you've been the dickhead that then turned up and went, I'm just going to walk in and do my lines, and it's not really that important, that line. So I think ever since I've tried to surf a line, I try not to learn things off to the point where I'm bored by them. Yep. So I try to learn them and know more, and leave it until the last minute to learn them, which sounds like a risky kind of, and I have not quite, I've fucked it sometimes where I haven't quite been that comfortable. I think it's a lot less likely when you've got big chunks to deliver, because you're not going to go in by the seat of your pants. And I had learned this for the audition. For the audition, I did my 2 scenes in episode 3 for the self-tape. So I'd had to learn it in like September. And by the time it came around in November, it was just a case of relearning it. But the other thing I do that's really questionable, and I don't apologize for this, is depending on the character, I don't read the rest of the scripts. So I actually didn't know what was happening in any of the other scenes, because I decided that Brendan didn't know. Right. And it's risky, because then I didn't know quite how terrifying some of the characters were when I was in the background of scenes. But I always feel like you should know as much as your character does, and know more. And then also the thing about acting against opposite Sean and Stephen, you just can't think about that. That's like, if you spent time doing that, you wouldn't actually do your job. And I'm massive fans of those 2 guys, as Lewis will know from my last day on set when I was begging for selfies. But but until that moment where you're finished, you can't actually let yourself think about that.
Yeah, definitely. James, do you have the same, the similar kind of process? Or when I've worked with, I've not worked with Stephen or Sean, but like with actors who I've like admired for years, definitely sort of makes me up my game though, in terms of like, I feel you can't help but be better because they're delivering. So it's sort of like, I don't know, you just sort of like, it's like everyone on set just brings their A game really, when you're like, okay, right, I'm doing it now. I'm always got validation. I'm opposite this person. I must be good. I mean, James, how was it for you, man? What was your process like?
It was great. It's kind of like what I said before. Any nerves or ego that like was on set or that was there before set, it's just instantly gone, because you walk in and I'm not one of those people that's like, I'm quite, so even though it's Sean Bean and like I'm a massive fan of Jimmy, and when Lewis introduced me to Jimmy, I got scared, so I just went high and ran away because I'm scared of making a fool of myself. Yeah. But Sean and Stephen made everyone so like just your mate on set. It's not that you forget who they are and you don't respect them. It's the fact that like they embrace you and they pull you in. They want you to do as well as possible, so you're never at doubt of what you're going to do, and they're always throwing little things at you and ideas. And so when it came to that, it was kind of like nice. It was fun because, all right, I'm bullying Sean in the scenes, and that's not nice to do. But after it was done, it was like Sean would put his arm around me and we'd have a laugh. It was never that thing of me going, oh, this, that, and the other, because I was never in that space to begin with. Because as soon as you get there, they're doing it with everyone, and it was just like we're all in it together. So for me, but then the lines thing, I have a different approach to Jonathan, because I get like, because I'm dyslexic, I try and learn it, and then I learn it to a point where I don't want it to sound like lines. I want it to sound real. So I sometimes do have the odd occasion where I can ad-lib, and I'm quite bad for it. So I have to make sure I'm on that. But preparation, it's just your research, isn't it? It's your research, talking to people, and you create the world before you step into it. And then when you're in the prison and you've got your costume on and it's freezing cold in there and all those things that you don't think about. And then COVID's helped, I guess, with everyone's preparation of having the freezing taken away. I think it was COVID made it easier for people who were playing inmates, because we'd all experienced what it was like to have your freedom taken away.
Yeah.
But with Sean and Stephen, they're just a dream. But then you got
you more than most. You more than most, because 5 days into the shoot, you had to isolate for 14 days in a hotel room. I've got some amazing videos I wish I could share of James singing Grease to me and then WhatsApping at me. But yeah.
Let's just say I've completed Tipping Point.
Nice. Loads of questions came in asking about working with you on set, Lewis, and you just mentioned that ad-libbing there and a little bit of improv. I've been at a few read-throughs where Stephen's been one of the leads as well, and he seems to, even in the read-throughs, to sort of like add little bits in, like little personality, bit of banter. I don't know if that's like how he works on set or if that's just at read-throughs. How free were people, Lewis? Because you post quite a lot of storyboards on Twitter, and you'll show the shot that you wanted to set up, and then the actual shot that the shot that you'd sketched, and then the shot that actually aired. Did you have like a set structure going in where it was like, right, this is sort of like, not set in stone, but like, a concrete kind of structure, or did you let people play around more? How do you work with the actors?
I think I've said this on one of the podcasts I've done with you before, Ross. I kind of work in a way where I over prepare and then throw it away on the day. So I've got it to fall back on, but I don't. And I think the only reason I do that is, and it's that famous thing I think I've definitely said it with Sacha in the editing podcast, I think, is that thing from Apocalypse Now where Dennis Hopper's sort of not learned any of his lines, and there's that great scene where Francis Ford Coppola is screaming at him like, you haven't learned the lines, and Dennis Hopper's high as a kite going, fuck the lines, man. Like, and then all of a sudden Francis is like, you can't throw the lines away, Francis, if you've not learnt them. And I think that's such a valid point in all aspects of life, that you can't throw the lines away, you can't ad-lib unless you understand what the scene is, what the work is, because it's about respecting the work and the scripts. And so yes, we did ad-lib a little bit with Jimmy's permission, because it always depends on the writer and the exec producers. But we did it in a way where and Jimmy felt comfortable and Tom felt comfortable that it was about character, and it was about refining and understanding that James is now Jono, that Jono was a fictional character, but now someone is inhabiting that person, and you want that person to fit and feel like they work in that body and in that soul of that person that Jimmy's created. And I find it too much on you can quite often find on telly where I think things don't work and there's an awkwardness is because there's been a rigidness to what's been written. And the reality is, and in film, it's very much this, there's free rewrites of the film. You know, there's the script, there's the shoot, and there's the edit. And at each stage, there's refinements to make the story work. And I do think sometimes in TV, we get this kind of, we write it, we shoot exactly as it's written and there's no movement there. And then in the edit, you're kind of fixing things that you could have easily have fixed if you'd had the ability and the flexibility to respond. Yeah. Because, you know, when we write, we're responding to what we're writing. When we shoot, we're responding to what we're seeing and what's written. And then when we're editing, we're responding to what we've shot. And I feel like sometimes you can miss out the middle step where it's like, you need writers that are brave enough to allow directors, as long as I think it all comes down to the director and the writer having a trust and an understanding that they respect the material. But I do find that I've seen it quite often where certain things in a show, there's a moment that doesn't work because they've tried to deliver what's written and not being given that flexibility to just move it away slightly or try something that feels more authentic. And I think Jimmy very much is the kind of writer that, and Tom can talk about this maybe more, but I felt Jimmy was very hands-on but hands-off. Like he wrote it, delivered it to us, and very much was kind of like, you know, if I ever asked him stuff, he was like, well, I'm not there, whatever you think, you know, like it was very much, he liberated us as a team to, and in the edit as well, I think Sacha would vouch, and you know, we were given, we were allowed to explore the material. And then what Jimmy would always do is he'd always watch, we'd present our cuts and then he'd always watch the longer cut and there'd be a discussion about things, but he would always let us explore the material, and that goes with performance as well. But Tom, you have a better understanding of that anyway because you work with lots of writers.
I mean, what you touched upon, you know, James there in terms of ad-libbing, there are some fantastic lines that are in the piece. I'll break your jaw is an ad-lib. I think Do One Grandad is as well. Yeah. They come, and I suppose if they're authentic and they feel truthful to the character, then you can't imagine it any other way. On the day, what you need from, you know, a director's point of view is an actor that has both the scripted version and the ad-lib version equally well in their head. And so, you know, when you know it comes out, I'll break your jaw. Brilliant. Okay, yeah, we've got that. I can't even remember what the original version of that was now because it's so embedded in my head.
I'll punch you one.
And it was even more brutal because I think because it stuck in my head. It's funny you mentioned this line, Tom, because I think you said I'll snap your jaw.
There you go.
Which is even worse than I'll break. It's just even more horrific.
Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite lines. One of my favorite lines in the whole piece is an ad lib, and it's Bobby at the phone calling Sean or Wool.
Yeah, Wool. Yeah,
and I remember that moment because I was crying with laughter. I didn't even know what it meant, and I was like, "What does that even mean?" And he's like, and as soon as I walked up to him, he went, "Oh, don't make me cut that line, Lou. Don't make me cut it." So Bobby had obviously had it in his head that he wanted to say it because it felt authentic to him. I just needed to understand what it was because I was like, I'd never heard it.
What was it? Tell me again.
It's a woolly back. It's calling somebody. James can explain it, but right. So James is genuinely, authentically from Liverpool. But if you are on the peripheries of being from Liverpool, even Runcorn, Ormskirk, those sorts of places. Chester. God, I'm way too far out. I'm beyond that. But those sorts of peripheral areas, the insult is you're a woolly back, and he abbreviated that to being a wool. That's right, isn't it, James?
Yeah. Yeah, it comes from basically in the 1700s, the farmers went on strike in Liverpool. So then all the out of towners came with the hand carts and they'd pull it, but they'd have a sheep rug on the back to pull the wool so it didn't rub on the back. So they'd have like a wool sheepskin on the back, and that's where the term comes from, woolly back.
Brilliant.
Amazing.
Brilliant.
But anyway, it's one of my favourite moments, and it just come from the fact that I think Bobby felt that. And the same, I mean, the biggest player of material, actually, ironically, was probably Brian McCarty. He really played with the material, but knew the script well enough that I was like, that doesn't work. And he was he was always wanting to play and try things. And then sometimes what he did would be perfect, and sometimes you'd have to occasionally pull it back to the script. But I think
there is another exception. So one is being able to drop into what the original version is when the director comes forward and says, you know what, I'm not sure that one's hitting. I think we should stick with it, and having it in your head so clearly. I think the other one is if you're in a two-hander.
Yep.
Some actors find it very, very disrupting to the performance if you're not giving them what they've learned.
Yeah.
And it depends on the relationship with the person you have opposite you. Again, guys, you're the actors. I'm only saying that because I can see, the fear sometimes. But go on. What's it like, Jonathan?
I don't know. The whole thing about this is in my head about this is always that I really like improving, but it just sometimes seems inappropriate, and I find that being a day player or like that kind of part of it is very hard to walk into a space and claim the right to do anything approaching that kind of level of creative input where you're like, I'm going to suggest something.
Having the guts, yeah.
And I always think like that's something to suss out over the first day or two. And I just found with the part I was playing that, and maybe the order we shot things in, that wasn't where I was improving. I think where it was living for me was in the pauses, and I think that's as valid. And I think for me anyway, like I used to really plan everything I did. After that, you better learn your fucking lines. I remember going through a period where I would have like, I'm going to be sitting at my desk and my feet are going to be up like this, and I'm going to deliver that line like this. And then somebody else would come in with something really unexpected. And I used to be one of those actors that would totally throw, because it would, but in my head, you delivered that line some other way, or I'd actually gone as far as to almost plan what I was going to be given. And it's taken me then, I guess, the past 15 years to get to a point now where like, if somebody throws me something, I'm totally comfortable with taking it and seeing what I can give back. But also, like I said, it depends on the context, the director, the writer, the amount of agency you actually have afforded to you, and what your role is. And I think my role in that very much, it's not functional, but it is very much, you're performing a narrative function. It's a very interesting and for me, a very rewarding narrative function, but it's a narrative function and you have to respect that as well, I think.
Sacha, just out of curiosity, when you get the rushes, do you instinctively go for the scripted takes, or do you just how does it affect you in terms of what you're receiving?
Well, I mean, I'll sort of always I have as you know, Lewis, like I love writing, and like, for me, I equate editing to writing. It's just we're doing it with images. So I mean, and particularly with Jimmy's scripts, it's like a dream to be sort of working with that kind of quality. So I'll always be initially selecting with that in mind, and like assembling first, because even if you try something new, someone at some point is going to be like, can I see it how it was written?
Yeah.
So but I will, in that sense, still watch everything, and if there's something different and interesting, I'll be like, oh, that's quite nice, let's put that to the side, and maybe we can use this to develop things. And I think, Jonathan, you said that at the beginning when we got on this call about how you watch the scenes and you're like, oh, there was a bit more of a pause there between that line. I didn't expect that, but that worked well. And it's like that. It's that thing of I'll be in tune to the rhythm, and maybe it didn't have it in the writing, but it now warrants a bigger pause here or more time here or what have you. But I will absolutely approach it based on how the scene was written, and I reread the scene just before I start selecting, so that it's really fresh in my mind as I'm watching the rushes, and then that way I can kind of try and listen for how that sounds based on what I just read.
So in the weekly assemblies, if someone throws in like a curveball line that you like, do you leave it in, or what's your instinct?
In the weeklies, the instinct would be to leave it out and just to put what was written, because it's like, I'm of two minds with the weeklies. Like they're useful, but I also think it's like they should just be viewed as an individual thing, and so then it should match the script, and okay, it works, it flows great. and then, you know, until you and I have spent time working on it and crafting it, then we can try putting in new and different things, unless I'm specifically requested to do it, of course. But otherwise,
I agree with that. I think for me, the weeklies are a representation of the version that we all signed up for.
Correct.
Which is the one that we signed off on, which was that blue script. You know, yeah. And so we sign off on that script, and what you want to see on the weeklies is we got that, and it worked.
Exactly.
And that's why you're watching it, to just make sure that everything has worked, and there's no missing bits that, you know, that bit actually we need to go back and relook at.
Exactly.
In the edit, then that's where, to some extent, you say, well, we can park knowing that we've got it covered, and we can now have more fun with it, and we can be a little bit more liberated and move forward. And that's where you start to see, you know, the performances grow, and the pacing come in a slightly different way as well, where you're choosing to find the pause and rest with the moment, or, you know, or not. And it's a different set of rules by that stage.
Absolutely.
I want to come and sit in on an edit with you, Sacha. I'll make you tea and, like, you know, like cook your food and stuff. I just want to see how it works. I think it's fascinating.
There was no edit room on this. We did it remotely.
Well, it was remotely, innit? Yeah, of course. It'll be.
This is the room, right?
I'm not being rude, by the way, on the phone. I'm trying to get Stephen Stephen and Hannah.
Yeah. What's he playing at? Say, come on, let's 10 minutes. There's one particular question.
So Hannah's out, but she's back in 25 minutes, so she might get him on then. So
that's all right. Yeah, we can. Well, if anyone's got to, leg it. I mean, I'm completely unemployed and free, so I'll stay as long as. I'm
in isolation because of COVID, so
you've got as much time in the world.
I was going to say something about the edit there from an actor's perspective. I've directed like 2 average short films, and the best thing about them from an actor's perspective was I'd never been in an edit before. And I realized how, and this is again, how much it still is to do after an actor's finished their job. After you walk away, like, job well done, lads, and go and do your thing and, you know, congratulate yourself, how much work there is, but also that I understood an actor's job differently. And like that, I always, because most people learn how to do what they do in theatre first, or maybe, I don't know, but that's what I did, that you think about pacing it yourself, and that's not really your job, which was really liberating, because actually you can kind of, in some instances, I think you can milk pauses, knowing that if they don't like it, they can cut into it, or like that there's something about, I've changed my attitude to how I act, having been in an edit, and I think anybody gets a chance to be in an edit for anything should absolutely jump at it, because I said it earlier on, it's not an actor's medium. I genuinely believe film and TV aren't actors' mediums. It doesn't matter how great the directors are, and Lewis is a great director and he makes actors feel really central to what he does. It can be taken away from you or given to you in the edit. And I think that, for me, just made me go, the pressure's off me in a way to construct this thing that makes sense on its own. I just have to give people things to pick from and pull from.
I think we said it, me and Sacha did a podcast about editing and performance for Ross, ironically, about a year or so ago. And, I think I said then, like, it surprises me how few actors, when they win BAFTAs, thank the editors. There's a real clear lack of understanding of how an edit can really build a performance. And I think you started the session, Jonathan, by saying you sometimes on the floor see great performances that aren't very well edited, that, you know, fall apart, or performances that you're not convinced by, and then you see the edit and you're like, wow, okay, that was phenomenal. And I've definitely been in that position where I've seen Sacha save a performance, make a performance better. Edits are constantly protecting performances. And I'm always surprised how little understanding or appreciation there is from an actor's perspective on the fact that an editor has essentially protected their performose, or
they're your best friend. The editor is your best friend. In post, it's the editor, and in production, it's the whoever's looking after the lighting, so cinematographer. Yeah,
I agree with that. I mean, when actors are at a level where they can start to influence who's involved on the production. They ask about makeup, they ask about DPs. Very rare they ask about editors, and I would totally agree that there's an awful lot an editor can do to make you look a lot better, and equally they can really screw you over if they're not very talented.
if you upset Sacha.
And I would, if I was an actor, I would be a lot more terrified of, what's the editor going to do to this? Because I think I put in a good performance there. But from that moment on, it's out of your control. It's similar when a writer hands over a script to a director and goes, well, it's good now, but what are you going to give me in the end? That's a nerve-wracking process to go through.
Give it to Lewis. Give it to Sacha. They'll sort it out.
You'll be fine.
Easy peasy. There's a question here that I promised an actor I would ask. It's probably more for James and Jonathan, just from an actor's perspective. Let me just find it so I don't butcher it.
This is for James.
This is. Do you know what? It might even. It's applicable for both of you, but in terms of your character, Jonathan Brendan, and sort of like past trauma, might be something you've got a lot of input on here. He says, when it comes to real heightened emotions as an actor, and you've both had scenes in time with heightened emotions, a lot of actors take themselves to a place. This might be how you work, or might be not how you work, but this guy takes himself to a place that's pretty dark to stir up what's required to get emotional pretty quickly. And he's put here, he just wanted to ask how you guys use these experiences. If you do that, if you maybe take yourself back to a previous time of trauma. When I was going through heartbreak and I was going through a terrible relationship breakup in 2015, my auditions were so good that were emotional because I was like, I could just use that. But he said, how do you use the past experiences whilst one, not becoming numb to them, because you revisit them time and time again, like, so they stop having that impact on you. And two, still respecting them and not feeling like you're using them. He said, I feel a bit guilty that I'm using these experiences that were bad experiences in my life. This guy has suffered quite a lot of loss in his life, and also been in the situation incarcerated, like, within the show. And he was like, how do I use this while still respecting it and whilst keeping it kind of fresh? I mean, how do you guys take yourself to those places, those scenes you had, Jonathan, where you're revisiting this childhood trauma that your character had? There's a thing that got you in prison. Like, what were you doing to get yourself there?
I can't remember is the answer. Like, so I'll say one thing. Lewis was very good at keeping me safe. So Lewis was like, do you want to come and sit in my room with me, dude? So I was kind of sitting I didn't realize the actors were all sitting in a different room. Like, I didn't realize that Siobhan and Stephen were sitting around the corner in a room. I just thought there was nowhere for everyone. And Lewis was going in and sit there, and it was me and the script supervisor just sitting in silence. And I was listening to music. Actually, that's what I was doing, because I change, my process changes depending on what it is. I was listening to music from my teenage years, from when I was like 13.
Right.
Because what I really wanted to hold on to was the innocence rather than the trauma. So the thing that set me off in that scene was seeing my victim's little brother as a man, and not having seen the intervening 25 years of his life. So I had chosen not to make it about me or my personal trauma. So it was just about being 13. So Lewis was surprised because he thought I was going to be listening to like Barber's Adagio for strings. And it was like, I can't remember what it was. It might have been like Supergrass or like something really buzzy and like teeny. And then I would go in and sit in the chair and do the thing. And then it'd be like, and I was actually singing to myself in the chair, bizarrely. And that's not something I always do. I very rarely use music, but it's such a real access to step back in times of my own life. But what I find is, as I get older, I find accessing emotions and get so much easier. Like, my mom's in hospital at the minute and she cries all the time at everything. And I think she's not terminally ill or anything. She's just not well. And I think your own sense of your own mortality approaching makes it much easier to access emotions. Plus, being a parent for me recently, like, has made all that stuff so easy to access, because like, I just need to think about something. If anything were to ever happen to my child, where would I be? And that just cripples me. So yeah, it's odd. It just depends. But in this occasion, I wasn't thinking about trauma. I was thinking about innocence and getting old and missing out on things.
It's worth noting, though, that you only needed to, I remember particularly that the hardest thing in that scene was the bit where you stand up and he stops you and he says, he would have done anything for you, me too. And it stops you dead in your tracks. And it's the moment where you decide that you're going to give up this secret that you've held on to for the last however many years. And I remember we had to break that from the rest of the scene, and you were okay and you had the music, and we did it 3 times. you only need to get it. I think there's a misconception with acting that you need to get it every single time.
Yeah.
And Sacha can vouch for me that I think we did three takes of that moment. The first one, I don't think we quite felt it. The second one is the one we actually is in the piece, and your voice breaks in that moment, and you sort of whatever happened in that moment. And then the third one we did was good again, but just lost that
reaching for it.
Well, but ironically, in the edit, Sacha used the third one, and it was only when we really sort of mined the scenes and we sort of went back over all the takes, which we do, that we sort of were like, that's the one. And but it's like you only need to get it once, and I think there's this pressure that actors put themselves under where every take needs to be that, and it's like you don't need to get every take. You need one take to be that. And the other takes can even help you get there, or you can go over, but you only need one take that's right. So it's not about holding yourself in a state of perpetual sort of emotional vulnerability. It's about sort of allowing yourself that chase to the summit to be successful and coming back down. And yeah, I just remember that, like you only got it that perfect once. It wasn't like you hold on to that all day, or I mean, it'll be different for James, because James, we'd love to hear your in terms of this, because your energy in this is different than that emotional energy. It's more, you're holding on to something else, especially because you're not Jono. You're such a lovely human being, but sometimes did you make choices about, and you tell that great anecdote, which I'll let you tell now, about the Terps scene, and about you told me I want to try something. Is that okay with the Terps? Which I loved. But, were you making decisions, and how were you holding on to Jono in those moments?
See, I'm totally different in the way I go about things. I do put music on, and I let that rhythm just sit in me. Because for me, I like the texture of things. I think the costume helps. I think, as I said before, how cold it was in the prison. And I always remember Lewis giving me a note with the tapes scene. And it was like, at any moment, a guard's going to come in here. That just gives to your performance straight away, because not only am I getting something out of Mark, I've got the stake of a guard walking in any moment and catching me doing it. And that gives it that messiness and that extra. I don't know what it is. It's like an explosion in the scene. It's like a boom. Because the way Jimmy wrote it was so beautiful. It was like, you feel sorry for him because his wife's just asked for a divorce. Then he goes sit in his cell and he gets told the letter's not getting sent. So the audience is already gripped into this, like, oh my God. And then boom, this little arsehole walks in and is just terrorizing him. And so for me, when I approach a scene, I don't ever think in my head, oh, when I was 15 and I wanted to do X, Y, Z to someone. It's really weird, because everyone has different processes and every character is different. And I always remember Stephen Graham spraying aftershave. And if I don't idolise him enough, I'm nicking that off him. I'm going, okay, I'll wear that aftershave, because I do think textures and smells and things like that just add to the, like, even if you wear 2 pairs of socks and it makes your feet uncomfortable in the scene, like, you're not putting a stone in your shoe, but it does, they're the little things that I think give to performance, rather than me going in there and going, oh, when I was 15 and Jade didn't want to text me back or whatnot. I find that I hold on to that, and then I'm trying to find something that I was doing then. Whereas I'm playing a 25-year-old lad in prison who is scared, so he's going to make everyone's life hell so he doesn't get bullied. And I think that's the way I worked it. Everyone's different. Everyone has different processes.
What's the aftershave thing you're saying?
It's the character thing. He picks an aftershave based on the character, and then and he has it on set. And
no way.
Yeah, I mean, he can talk if he comes. He can talk.
Come on, yeah, get him on.
I'm trying. I literally, that's why I keep looking at my phone. It's not that I'm being rude, but apparently I'm sure they'll join us.
Just a few minutes.
Talking of getting people on, I have to leave for another meeting. I will try and come back on. I'm enjoying this far more than the meeting I'm about to go on.
Tom, can I just say before you go, I'm so sorry if I get dead nervous around people on set. So I didn't want to make a fool of myself going, oh, Tom, I just wanted to stay away.
You terrified me with.
Yeah, I told him.
You came up to me and he said, "Who do you support?" And I said, "Liverpool," because I'm a mad red. But I was terrified that it'd be a toffee. But I thought, I can't lie, because I am. And if I get it wrong, I'll get it wrong. And he went, "Oh, great."
Thank you. Amazing. Bloody hell.
Anyway, I will be back. I hope I'll be back before you guys have gone.
Wicked. Cheers, Son. Though, great to catch up with you, mate. Let's go to the edit first, and then we'll come back to the acting thing, because this is probably one just for you, Sacha.
Yep.
It's in terms of, again, we spoke about this a little bit, I think, before I press record. And again, it goes back to, I guess, how terrifying James is and stuff like that. But there's a lot of tension created within the piece through the score, through the grading. Into the grading's got a very cold. It's interesting you're saying it was really cold actually in there, James. But like the grade has got a cold look, so it's like a greeny blue sort of like grade on it. The music and the tension and the score. Who chooses who does the score for you, Lewis? Is it the same person each time you like to work with? And just how did you put that kind of together in the edit to, again, just give these characters even more impact? People were just interested in terms of grading and scoring a piece.
I mean, I'll let Sacha answer more about music and stuff. But I mean, yes, I mean, Sarah Warren, who scored this, did Des, did Dark Money. She's someone I've worked with for I think 10 years now. We met at film school, and me, Sacha, and her have done a few jobs together now, and we have a really lovely way of working, and we're going to hopefully continue that relationship, because Sarah comes in. What's unique about that relationship, which Sacha can talk about, is Sarah comes in very early and is scoring when we're assembling, essentially, and her and Sacha have a very good dialogue and know each other very well, so that helps. I'm glad you commented on the music, though. I had a meeting this morning and someone commented on the music particularly and said how they found the music incredibly emotional, but like it added an extra voice to the piece.
And you know what? Yeah. It's like it's there, but it's not there. That's the thing. It's almost sort of like I was just going back through the episode yesterday to see where it was kind of coming. It's almost sort of like so. I think it fits it so well that it's almost like you don't notice it as I don't know how to explain it properly. It just fits the piece so well.
I'm very glad to hear you say that, because it's it's one of, I mean, I love music as well. I mean, music is like writing. There's rhythm and tone, etc., and the same with acting. But it's always a dangerous game, I think, because you can oversaturate stuff with music, and it's something I'm always slightly conscious of trying not to do. But equally, it's, you just know when it needs support and when scenes need to be supported with music and what feels right and what doesn't. And as Lewis said, Sarah is a fantastic composer and a real pleasure to work with. It's a wonderfully fulfilling collaboration. And so we do then have that opportunity to discuss, and she'll see the weeklies and then we'll speak, and with Lewis as well, and just sort of talk about what isn't working, or the thing of kind of almost like colors on a palette. Like as you're starting to build up the assembles, you're going fast and you're trying to get things out and get through all the material, and you might start using the same cues again, and it's that thing of what are we missing? We're kind of hearing the same stuff over and over again. What is another color we need, or what is something missing from the palette? And so then we sort of look at that, and slowly but surely you build it out. And then you watch it back, and that's something I've started doing recently, is stripping the music, or we both have, really, Lewis and I together, is stripping the music out from the weeklies as we do the first, or as I do my first editor's cut, and kind of building it back in, because otherwise if you kind of put it all together at once, when you watch it back, it's just like a barrage sometimes of music, and there's doing an individual scene, adding in music, that's just to see how things work, and then you start doing it on a grander scale.
Anecdotally, though, I think with this one, more than any one we've done, we overscored it slightly, and then in the mix with Sarah and our mixer Patrick, we made choices, but we weren't in with Sarah knowing that was what we were going to do. And for example, the end of the episode 1 used to have music on the credits.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think on day 1 in the mix, we were looking at it, and I just felt there was too much music in the back end, and we took that cue out, and then quickly rang the sound designer and sort of created a sound atmosphere, which ironically, when it goes live on BBC One, you don't get, because the guy comes over and starts saying next on BBC One. But on iPlayer, you kind of get the full, the full experience of that kind of Stephen walking off after, his son's life being threatened, and then that silence, which is really, and we, you know, other anecdotes musically, I suppose, is, you know, the opening sequence we did it without music. So, you know, the whole sequence in the van, we did it without music. And this is an example of, you know, how every layer of a filmmaking process affects your reading as an audience. It worked really well without music, but what it did was it made you think that Sean is trying to listen to James and Bobby's conversation.
Right, yeah.
And then the minute you put the music in, it feels more experiential. Like actually what he's doing is he's not listening specifically, but he's feeling overwhelmed. So I think, you know, we were constantly playing with music, and, you know, that's just one example in that opening 30 seconds of how with and without music, it has a completely different feel and reading. I was just saying, Sacha, about how, you know, without music on the very first 30 seconds, it felt like Mark was trying to listen to James's conversation, and then it gave a different reading to the fight in the next scene. And whereas actually, so it's really, I mean, just that level of detail of what one piece of music can do to a reading is so important. And yeah.
Can I ask a question about something to do with
Jonathan,
the thanks, man. I find it really interesting watching that it was there were no top of the show like pre-credits, so there was no like Sean Bean, then another couple of shots, then Stephen Graham, then another couple of shots, you know, produced by, which is a really like, it shows a lack of ego in part of those people making those decisions. But I wonder, is there a creative reason for that? And then the kind of second part of the question is, like, as a cast member, I'm really conscious of cast ordering, and I think it's really nice whenever cast ordering is almost appears totally random at the end of something, particularly when, you know, you're further down the list than everyone else. And like, is that something else that you decide on as a director? Is that part of your kind of the way you see the team thing, or like how are those decisions made?
I mean, for this, I mean, I'm not a massive fan of upfront titles anyway, as Sacha knows. You know, I don't do them. You know, for me, you know, when I envision we did a thing at film school called opening reels, which Ian Selley used to run, where you look at the first 5 minutes of a movie and you break it apart, because Ian's whole philosophy is a director is working their hardest in the opening of something, because you're setting everything up: tone, mood, atmosphere, character, story, narrative, everything. And so, you know, I think for me, like when you have a sequence and then you have a title sequence, for me, it kind of breaks the storytelling. It breaks and so we made a choice in Des not to do it. We didn't do it in Dark Money. We just had a 5-second sting, but then we had to do it in episode 1 to address a note, which was a story-based note. And then here, I'd never envisioned it, never really wanted to do it. And obviously, contractually, you're obliged to sometimes do it. So I have to present to the people who have a contract that says they have upfronts. I have to present to them the way I envision it, and then have to hope that people like Stephen Shaw and I think Siobhan and Sue, you know, go, yeah, fine, we totally support what Lewis is trying to do. So it's never straightforward, and some shows would benefit from a title sequence. So I just think every job is different, but my taste is generally that I find them quite, they can be slightly disharmonious. That's why I think some shows that just start with the title sequence and then go into the show is almost sometimes better, because you're not breaking the flow of what you're trying to establish. But yeah, each show is different. It depends on what the problems are and the things you're trying to do. And in terms of end credits, I mean, my thing is always like, I don't think anyone watches the credits anymore to kind of go, oh, that was him. We've got an Internet Movie Database now. If you like something, that's where people go.
Yep.
And also, people don't need to see Sean Bean and Stephen Graham name to know they're watching a Sean Bean and Stephen Graham piece. You know, so. And luckily, those guys don't really have an ego in that way. And, you know, I think people know who they're tuning in for. So it's not as important for them in their careers. It is probably important for people who are maybe keen to make sure their work is recognized. So, Jonathan, on this, maybe, you know, you would be nervous about making sure. But the reality is, if I was a director and saw your performance in something I loved, I'm getting your name from Internet Movie Database. That's the reality of it. So credits, I think, have less. And also, look, the credits on TV now get shrunk, and they put like things for the next. Like they've lost their value anyway, to a certain extent. You know, especially on, you think of Netflix and stuff. The minute the credits come up, there's a skip to next episode. It's like credits are kind of, I think they've lost their weight and their power and their merit.
Yeah.
I still screen grab them, so you know.
Yeah, I mean,
definitely. I want top billing, I want first card, and an extra $5,000. You don't have to. It's good if actors aren't too bothered about the politics around that.
That's great.
There was,
but it's not. I don't think it's ever. I think it's part of the actor's agent negotiation. I think it's important, and it's, you know, it makes sense. But personally, like, it's it has no weight for me or Sacha. If we need to do them, we'll do them. But
There was a cracking, just going back to the edit, there was a cracking scene, we'll just say it, we're not bothered about spoilers, where Mark, Sean's character, basically does a Mike Tyson on Jono. And I thought that was a beautiful sort of like sequence, but where obviously great acting, great scoring at that point, and then you decided to slow-mo it down, Mark's walk back to the cell as he's sort of got blood on his face, and it's sort of like almost dream sequence wise. It's almost like a bomb's gone off and you hear like that almost white noise sound as he's sort of disorientated. Was that planned or made in the edit? You just go, actually, this would be pretty good if we just did this in the edit, or were you planning that all along?
Well, you have to kind of plan those things, because you have to choose to shoot it at 50 frames a second. You know, what I can't do is say to Sacha, on something
25 frames.
Can you
12.5 frames.
I mean, you can slow-mo 25 frames football, but it adds frames and it creates a weird slow-mo. I think we knew we wanted to do something there, just because it's that moment where Mark has, in a way, triumphed against his own insecurities and his own nervousness about fighting back. Because the reality is, he loses that fight. I mean, like, James absolutely, like, you know,
it's brilliant that he comes back. It's so good, because you're just about getting off your seat to go on, Sean.
You're really wanting to smack him, don't you?
Because that's what TV's told us is going to happen. It's like, you know, later on when Sean's about to go into the house, my wife said, "Oh, please don't let him go in. Let's do something different." And then he doesn't go in. You're like, "Yeah, hey!" And I just loads of bits in that where Jimmy's really clever and goes, "No, it's not that show. It's not the show where he goes in and digs the guy. The guy goes down like a sack of shit, and then he's triumphed over the bully." It's like, life's much more complicated than that. And whenever Jono comes back, I was delighted, not for Sean's character obviously, but just narratively thinking that's brilliant, because it's so true to what would actually happen. Like, that guy would never go over and dig Jono, and Jono would go down without a fight. This would not happen.
We had conversations in the edit about there's slightly something unresolved about it, in that you get the impression that Jono's not going to, some people, that he's not going to sort of seek retribution. That actually there's if anything, a sense of respect, more for the fact that maybe Mark doesn't grass him in.
Exactly.
You know, he's lost that weight, that, you know. But I also like that at any point it adds an extra threat of, like, in episode 3, at any point Jono could turn around and go, "Do you know what? Actually, I am gonna seek retro," because that's life in prison. It's like, Mark thinks he's dealt with it, but has he dealt with it? Who knows how Jono will respond to it? And I think you could have really closed it off even clearer. And I think the clearest we do is, you know, the phone call, and you see Jono waiting for the phone. And I feel like in that moment there's respect, but it could always open up again. And I think that's what's interesting.
That's what's created in the world, isn't it? Of, like, Jimmy's writing. Like, one of the most beautiful scenes is where Cav goes into Mark and asks him to help him write the card.
Brilliant.
Now Cav closes the door. The door gets closed. So even as an audience member, as Sean's explaining the word love and it's getting written, why has he shut the door? Is something going to happen? Because you haven't met Cav's character yet. So even in the most tender of moments like that, there's still that thing of it's like a torch paper waiting to be lit. And as an audience member, you're uncomfortable thinking, "Oh, is he going to get a Harden?"
It's true.
Yeah, I thought that was an amazing scene. It was like just a really light moment where you thought, "Oh, prison." Because I texted Lewis after episode 1, and I was like, mate, you need to play this in every school in the country because this will put people going off prison like forever. Like, I don't want to. I'm never going to commit crime anyway. But if I was going to, if I watched time, I am never doing anything prisonable in my life. If this is what prison is like. But that was a really sort of beautiful, tender moment where you go, oh, actually, you know what? Mark's teaching this guy how to write and spell and read, and he's writing a Valentine's card to his was it Valentine's or a birthday card?
Anniversary.
It's an anniversary. Ironically, me and James and Jack have a little WhatsApp group with Stephen, and we've been sharing messages we've been getting. And I had one from someone the other day who spent 6 months inside, and he was saying that he was a teacher. He helped people to read in there, and he commented on that as something that really touched him. And he said that experience of that made prison life a bit easier for him. And Jack had, I won't talk too much about it because it's quite personal, but Jack had someone reach out to him who was completely moved by his character's story in terms of they had somebody in a similar predicament who just latched onto the fact that, Jack's character felt so much shame, and what he did was, it was all about his downfall. His downfall was due to his own pride, and that's the thing that's been incredible. Is even these little moments that Jimmy writes that are quite sort of they pass you by really quite quickly in the show. There's so many of those little moments that people have kind of latched onto in a really positive way. That's been the most rewarding thing about the whole job, actually, is the messages from people that have experienced some of the things that we're looking at and have kind of picked on things that were I would argue, are easily cuttable from a commissioning point of view and a narrative point of view. They are quite cuttable, but actually are the things that solidify why Jimmy is one of the greatest writers we have, I think.
Agreed.
Yeah, no, definitely it is.
On that note, I'm just going to go for a wee-wee really quickly. I call it a wee-wee.
Right, you go for a wee-wee.
I have to go because I'm visiting Mum.
Go.
I've got to get out. Thanks, dudes.
Jonathan,
I'll be back. I'll be back, and hopefully we'll have a Mr. Graham with us.
Come on, Steve, get yourself over. But Jonathan, great to see you, mate, and great work.
Take care, Jonathan.
Take care, lads.
I know, obviously, Jimmy would have done a shitload of research, on prison life and what actually it's like to be in there. So many people have commented on how sort of authentic a lot of this was. What did you do any? I mean, could you do any kind of research in terms of like what it's like to be on the inside? I mean, I don't know. I mean, what did you read about it or like anything like that?
Well, first of all, Lewis sent us these 3 amazing documentaries that were on Channel 4, and they all had different. So the first one was about mental health in prison. The second one was about, I think it was about the spice epidemic.
Oh, okay.
And then the violence, and so we sent us that. And then as an actor, you always go away and do your research because it's your job, isn't it? It's what you love doing. If you don't love it, why do the job? And I'm just fortunate that I have someone very close to me that done 8 years in prison.
Oh wow, okay.
So it was so accessible.
Thanks, Steve's here. Carry on though, James.
Hello, everyone.
We've been sharing your secrets.
Oh yeah, what secrets?
We've had them all. The aftershave, Steve.
We just. James said he thinks one of the best things he's learned from you is he's going to steal from you the character scent and the idea you have a different aftershave for every character.
Yeah. Okay. That's
James,
all right.
James has robbed
That's all right. James can have that one. As I've said to James previously, imitation is the highest form of flattery. So
It is.
And I did learn it from someone else as well. So
there we go.
All the best ideas are stolen. I'll see actors doing something on screen that's brilliant. I'll go, I'm having that. I'll just nick that because they've probably nicked it from someone else anyway. So I think that's all right. Just borrow things. It's not stealing. Stephen, thanks so much for joining us, mate. This means the world. I've got some specific questions for you that members of my community have put in. James, just finish your point off there. You were talking about 3 documentaries. We were talking about research, Steve. Of prison life effectively, and Lewis sent 3 documentaries out. So just finish that off, James, and then Stephen, I've got some specific questions for you, if that's cool, mate.
Oh yeah, so that was it. That was the research.
That's the story. There were some documentaries.
That's the story.
Excellent.
No
one
wants to listen to me. Get Stephen on.
Yeah.
No, they were brilliant documentaries, though, weren't they, James?
They were amazing. So insightful. Is that the word? I don't know.
I mean, the reality is, how do you prepare people for prison that haven't been in prison? You can only do it by showing documentaries or letting them speak to people that have been inside. Ironically, one of the guys that produced those documentaries got in touch with me this week to say how much they love the show, and he asked if we'd seen the documentaries before going in, and I was like, yeah, you know, I was like, they were part of a collection of documentaries that we shared, as well as ones. There's one set in Norwich about how important family is to prisoners, but yeah, Paddy Worrell, I think he is. His documentaries on prison are outstanding, and he's done a second series in women's prison that I haven't seen yet, but it's apparently also phenomenal.
Wicked.
But the characters in that documentary, I mean, I know Jimmy was like, you know, the part of you goes, can you be, you know, in a drama, can you better what that documentary's done? Because the documentaries are so powerful. But yeah, if you haven't seen them, they're worth a watch.
Yeah, no.
And the thing was from them documentaries as well. Sorry to come in on that, but it's that kind of with what happened in there was like one of the lads died, didn't he? One of the lads took his own life.
Oh wow!
And you could see the impact that it had on the rest of the. What I found was the impact it had on the prison guards. Do you remember that, James? When that young Asian lad died, took his own life, but he'd been constantly asking for help, and you went on this little journey. It was only a small part of the story, but you went on this little journey with the guards, trying to get him to help and really genuinely trying to get him a place. And it actually came to a point, didn't it? Correct me if I'm wrong, but they had him a gaff to go to, didn't he? Eventually.
I think that's a different. That's a different documentary. The one you're thinking of is the guy that they're trying to reintegrate. But the characters, what you're talking about is the same though. There's the guy called James, and he's in VP wing, and he hears voices, and he's
hearing voices,
and he's paranoid that they're spiking his food and they're trying to poison him. And it's a really sad story about mental. It's exactly what Jimmy's trying to say about mental health.
But then they got him a place, didn't they? They were just about to get him a place.
Maybe you're right.
Yeah. Because I'm sure because that's right. It was the other fella that they got the place for, and he got out. But that fella that was hearing the voices, he took his own life. But you could see the impact it had on the guards themselves. Do you know what I mean? And then with watching that, and also obviously I've read our script before, what Jimmy's done, and then that moment where I'm speaking to his mother outside, and we have that little discussion, and what my character says about what Eric says about, he shouldn't be, and loads of them shouldn't be in there, and that's true. That's there's truth and authenticity to that, because I'm not just saying it's because it's the statistics that are proven, but to see it in that documentary was heartwarming, wasn't it? It was really sad, man, to see that.
There was other really great moments that me and Stephen spoke about in those documentaries, which are just throwaway moments. There's a really great moment where a prison guard walking through, just a long shot that they've Paddy's film of a prison guard walking through all the cons, and he passes a con and he says something like, they have just some really, really loose rapport about like little boxy thing. And he goes, I'll knock you out or whatever. And it's just so throwaway. And it was something that we were like, Jimmy was really aware of before he'd even saw the documentary and he was writing, was that his experience of prison guards is exactly as Stephen was saying, is, they're not in there and they don't treat everybody, they are people existing in a job. They still let their guards down, and the best thing we got told from Graham, who was the prison guard that Stephen spent time with, was he said, the best thing you could do as a prison officer is know your prisoners. And that was something that we always used as a kind of balance. If we needed to do something with slight dramatic license, Stephen would always be like, that's fine. If I know that prisoner and I know he's okay, I'm okay to do this. But,
I've got a clip actually I can play in a second that's a good example of that ties to one of these questions, Stephen, that we've got for you. I put a message out, run a Facebook group, mate. I put a message out yesterday. I literally had about 100 emails and messages from people asking about. We've covered it with Jonathan and James, but asking about particularly your process in terms of character development. Lewis has shared with me that you have this special folder, that's got loads of magical notes in it and all this kind of
I don't know if it's magical. I mean, it's that thing I said earlier of like, Stephen does the work, and what's great is every time you talk to him about a scene, he has every scene broken down, and so you can actually have really good conversations about, and not just his words, but the scene. And I think it's that thing I was saying about Dennis Hopper and Francis Ford Coppola. It's like, you can't throw it away unless you've fucking done the work. And I don't think enough people do the work, is the reality. But yeah. It's not magical. I wish it was magical, but no, it's a pretty impressive folder, though. It's massive.
It brings the magic to the set, though. Definitely. Could you take us through that, Steve?
The essence with the folder as well is, look, primarily, for me, it's purely functional because of my dyslexia. What I tend to do is, I read the whole thing, unless it's a play, but I'll read the whole script, and we can talk about the script, and I find my way into my character and what moments is for what moments and what's kind of happening throughout the journey. But then it's a technique that me and Hannah kind of, and it's not just me that does it. I know a few other people do it, but I develop it where I break it down for me in bite-sized chunks. So if I'm, and look, and I'm in a very fortunate position, and I don't mean this, in any egotistical sense, any way, shape, or form. But when you're in 1, 2, 3, 4 in a script, and you're in kind of every day or every other day, or you've got big chunks, it's a process where I break it down daily, so I know exactly what I'm shooting on what specific day. And it's also, as James will back me up as well, because if you've got a couple of big days on the bounce, it's no good like having it all in your head. It's good to have it roughly there, but as soon as we finish work, I'm going back to my hotel room to sit and laying them lines for the next day.
Yeah.
So when I come into the next day, I'm ready to fucking go. Sorry, I swore.
No, it's fine. Shit. We're all doing it. It's fine.
Yeah, okay. All right. Sorry, I didn't know what the score was. So I'm ready to go. Do you know what I mean? And look, I understand it. I know different actors have their own techniques, and I respect all of them. But as the governor's just said there, what Lewis was saying, you can't really come into play if I'm coming in. If me and James are in a scene with someone, and we've spent the good 3 hours last night, 2 hours, whatever, learning our lines, and we come in separately. We come in and someone's just picking up the script to kind of find their lines. He's going to put us all back.
Yeah.
And we may get to a certain point within the scene at some point towards the end of the day. But if that soft swat had learned his lines and been ready to go first thing in the morning, we could have created that magic in the second take, and we could be somewhere else. We could have took it to a completely different level. And that's just my understanding of it personally. And I like to be able to have the conversations about what's happening in that specific scene. There's always, look, we can go all Stanislavski on it as much as we want, new dragons, you know what I mean, and talk about super objectives and all of that, and your wants and your means and all that. But for me, it's about breaking it down scene by scene and moment by moment, especially with film, because I have to also take into fact the implications of what's happened before. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Whereas in a play, you play it through the motions and through the time in itself. But with film and TV, you have to have an understanding of where you are. Just for me personally, that I'm just speaking for myself, and then we can talk, and then Lewis can send me off on a different direction. But then I can go there because I already know I'm grounded in where I am with what's happening at that particular time. Do you know what I mean? And then he can throw loads of different ideas out together, and as us as actors in a room, we can come up with ideas for each other, or we can play with it in the room and see what happens then. Do you know what I mean? But if I was to give any kind of advice to any young actor, or not even young actor, any actor, is do your work, because you need to do the work in order to make it look like you don't do the work.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? James and Bobby and Little Jack are only so fucking brilliant in the scenes and the stuff that they're in, because and you don't really get to see it as much as what happens on the telly. But Bobby's phone call, man.
We were talking about it earlier.
I stayed behind to watch it. I was blown away by it. It was
you're
brilliant.
in the scene. You're in the scene.
I know, but I was staying behind. I was like, I was just. There was one time where I forgot to come in, if you remember, because I was just going, mate, he's brilliant, and I forgot because I was watching from afar.
We were talking earlier about him throwing in the line. We were talking about. I said one of my favourite ad libs in the whole piece is him throwing in, "Shut up, you wall."
Yeah, shut up, you wall.
Yeah, so good.
But what I'm saying is a wool is a woolly back is a person. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we got the
connotations of sheep shagging and
all
that, which is probably not very nice. I'm right there, aren't I, James? But look, the reason why they look so, and people go, oh man, they look so authentic and so real. And yes, because they're playing completely polar opposites from themselves, every single one of them. But they do the work. Do you know what I mean? And you have to know the lines in order to come in and make it look like you're saying them for the very first time. Because if you're trying to just find them there and then, it can kind of hold everyone back, and that's a selfish attitude, I feel personally.
What extra work, Steve, do you do that like deeper that's not in the scripts? I don't know if you remember, mate, but I filmed behind the scenes for Phil when you were doing Boiling Point, the short, and I was seeing you on set. Like the attention to detail and the way you were sort of playing with it all. You were even sort of like figuring out, and you got really excited. I saw you talking about this, and you sort of lit up where you were talking about how the chef who you were playing, how he actually even sort of like piles the food on the plate. You'd made really specific decisions about how it was even going to look, and like how you specifically as that chef would make that dish. When it comes to Eric in this, what did you do was there any sort of like deep work like that wasn't like in the script that you were just coming up with, like to help you with the character?
Again, for me, and I've said this a few times, shoes are important for my character. Finding a walk is important for my character. Trying to change my body in little ways than Stephen is. Do you know what I mean? Stephen's tone and everything. I'm quite an excitable person, and I get very animated, and that. So even just to, and I was talking to James about this the other day, slowing my rhythms down. Do you know what I mean? Slowing my natural energy levels and my natural energy, just slowing that down for Eric. And it was about, because we had a really good chat right at the very beginning, me and Lewis, about where we thought Eric was from and what he was about. And he was kind of a traditional old-fashioned men, like, I'm sure James will back me up on this, and like my Uncle Eddie, do you know what I mean? Like your uncle. That's what Eddie was. That's what Eric was to me, like an uncle of some sort. Do you know what I mean? Very kind of black and white and right and wrong, and a good sense of moral conduct. But that kind of demeanor as well, where when he talks, you kind of listen because he doesn't waste his words. You know, that's what I noticed about the writing from Jimmy. Eric's words weren't wasted with waffle or anything like that. It was always to the point. Do you know what I mean? There was always a reason for his speaking, should I say. Yep. So for me, it was that kind of thing. And we both, me and Lewis came up with the idea that he was in the army previously before he joined. He joined. So that was another little avenue that we went down. I know this may sound weird, but it's one of my favourite moments to see my character when he was polishing his shoes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Polishing his shoes and ironing his shirt. And that's that military background that he's got. So it's just that. It's looking infinite, and it's looking for ways in the script, seeing if there's any hooks that you can connect to in the script. It's back that to breaking stuff down, what people say about you, what is said about you in the script, to take that out and see what you can get from that. But then also kind of creating a life of your own. Do you know what I mean? Creating a background and a solid place so you can play then.
But Stephen also, he spent an afternoon with a prison guard, and he helped shape certain scenes because, he would ask questions that I wasn't asking the prison guards. I'm asking questions about bigger things and authenticity, whereas Stephen's asking specifics about how do you open a door. So, I'd storyboard whole sequence where, Stephen's leading the prisoners for a thing. And then immediately Stephen comes up to me on day one and, he's like, just so you know, I never walk in front, I'm always behind. And things like I'd always stand at the door with a foot behind the door, which then some directors might have tried to convince, or some people might have tried to convince Stephen to do it the way, but you have to kind of adapt and go, well, that's brilliant, it's authentic. And you embrace that research, you embrace that fact that the actors are looking at things through a different window. And Stephen came with so much knowledge, as did James, Jack, and Bobby. Bobby in particular had spoke to so many prisoners who he knew, and I think James, you did as well, and got so many things that are so new and fresh that Jimmy was so open to us just trying and playing with. But I think everybody did the research and brought that to the table, and because they'd done the work, as Stephen says, there was room for us to play with it, which was unique.
Yeah, and that's the noise that I've heard on social media is how authentic it is. You wouldn't want a prison guard going, oh, but I'd never do that. You know, if Stephen's worked with a prison guard so that, you know, there is the 1 foot behind the door, or this is how you open the door, or don't go in front. Obviously, it's going to make it more impactful. Tom's back. Great to see you, Tom. How was your meeting?
The fame, as Tom's coming back.
I'm delighted you're still here. I'm sorry I had to dash off.
We're still...
and Stephen's here now, so there you go.
Exactly. I've got a clip.
Hello, mate.
Stephen, can I play you a clip? This is just one clip that I've taken. This is just based on a question around performance that I got. Quite a few people commented on a feeling of claustrophobia in this, in terms of, like, not just because people were locked up inside, and obviously it's a lot of small spaces, but in terms of you know, you've got us all on tenterhooks now, Ross. We want to see what clip you've picked. Oh well, it's
before
not.
You pick it, I've got to go.
Oh,
I've got to dash. I'm so sorry. See you
great to see you though, mate.
See you later.
Much love, dude.
Take care. See you later. See you later, lad. Ta-da.
All it is, this is just a clip that everyone will have seen, but I just thought it was a beautiful sort of moment. The first time you find out that that your son's in trouble. So let me just share this. Hopefully you guys will get this. And it's really what you're not saying that people were so impressed with. And I just wanted, like, if you could maybe talk a little bit about the internal work that's going on in your head, not necessarily the things that are coming out your mouth. Let's just watch it, and then hopefully you'll get what I mean.
Boss, you all right?
Yeah, you?
Sound as a pound.
That's what I can do for you.
See your lad's in Lowood Prison, boss.
My lad?
You're David.
I haven't got a lad called David.
That's strange, that. Because you mentioned him on Facebook, except there he says he's working away. But he's not, is he, boss? He's in Lowood Prison.
No, we're not really that close. No, I don't think you can use this against me, because there's no real bond between us.
No.
No.
Then how come you're down to visit him tomorrow? And bond or no bond, you want him to be comfy, wouldn't you? Yeah, but we know loads of lads there to make sure he's all right.
Is that a threat?
No, boss.
So if I ignore this conversation, what'll happen?
He won't be as comfy as he could have been.
Or as safe?
Maybe.
Alright, so you make him comfortable, you make him safe. What do I do in return?
We'll let you know about that.
Alright, give me a few days to think it over.
Of course, boss.
Boss. Hey, got a nap in 2 weeks ago for a change of wing, and I haven't heard nothing yet. What's happening?
2 weeks is not.
What do you mean? 2 weeks is nothing. You're on about? It's when you're surrounded by nutters.
I think it's one of the best scenes in it. Like, that's where, like, you think, oh shit, it's getting serious now. Yeah, I think this is just a perfect example, Stephen, of, like, everything being said in your face, as opposed to, you know, it's a conversation that you're trying to pass off as a very normal conversation, so no one knows what you're actually talking about, but there's some really serious stuff being discussed. How do you approach scenes like that, where you're like, right, I mean, what's literally going through your head as you're shooting something?
But look, majority of that is in the writing. If I'm honest, you know what I mean. The writing's there, and then it's the subtext that I create with Lewis as a team. Do you know what I mean? And obviously, what's his name now? I forgot his name.
Kadif.
Lovely Kadif. Lovely Kadif. Do you know what I mean? And that was interesting as well to watch how. You know, because we both come at it first from one point, and then we end up in a completely different point with what is the name of what he does, which is our director. Our director directs us down a way and down a road that you know we move together, and he'll ask you to hold certain things back, or he'll ask you to play a little bit more in a place, or think a little bit more about this, or what about this for a certain situation, and then it's just allowed to play.
I don't think I gave him a single note on that scene, just to say. I'm pretty good at remembering notes. I don't think I gave him a single note on that scene.
Nothing.
I mean, that scene is one of those great examples of, like, every time me and Sacha watched it in the edit, you go on a journey. There's a moment in it, watching it then, where you feel that Eric wants to just pull a knife out and just do him. But then there's moments where you feel completely vulnerable. And every time I watch it, you feel you know, you go on a journey with Eric that it's a perfect example of, like, what Stephen is very good at, and the best best actors in the world are very good at is, if you feel it, the audience will see it. And I think some actors, and we talked about day players quite a lot earlier, I think day players, because you come in and you've got such expectation, they feel like they have to show it, have to show everything. And it's like, and it comes from nervousness. And I think what Stephen does very well, and all the best actors, is have a confidence that if they can find a place where they feel something, they have to then trust that something's coming out for the audience. And that scene, for example, we had a lot of fun cutting that scene because, you know, even just where you wait the shots, like when Sacha chooses to cut to Kadif, is like, you know, and we did a whole scene. We tried it just holding on on Stephen, on Eric, and not going to Pete. And it just didn't work because you need Pete, you need that as well. So
you need to see the confrontation, you need to see the conflict. Okay, and he said it very lovely, and I'll be honest. Yeah, it is. It's that kind of thing of, for me, it always has to be as truthful as possible. And he's, you know, he's right. And it is a team collaboration. But if I don't feel it, then I have to blag it. And I don't like blagging, because blagging to me is acting, and I don't like acting. So I like to feel it. Do you know what I mean? I like to try and get a response inside. And then it's basically, you look at the size of him, of Kadif. He's a big man. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of that moment where, so I'm just watching it then as a seen, it's like going about my business, like, oh, all right, oh, fucking hell, all right, you're standing a bit too close. I'm giving you the internal dialogue. You're standing a bit too close. What the fuck are you doing here? What's your problem? All right. And then it's like, when he mentions my son, it's like, my world stops for a second. Do you know what I mean? It's like, how do you know that?
Yeah.
Where have you got that information from? Shit. And then it's trying to backpedal about how I can get out of this situation. About no. Well, it's not really. But all the while he's thinking, how do you know this? What the fuck are you gonna do? How do you know this? Where's this come from? And there's that kind of, which was a lovely little situation. What we found as well. I think you remember this, Lewis. I don't know if it was that scene or it was another scene where, when Eric is talking to someone, he's talking to them, but he's also aware and looking about what's going on in the prison as well, because at any moment anything can kick off. And I'm not being funny, but this could be a ploy, this could be a pull-in. I could then get involved in this, and before I know it, either someone stabbed me in the back of the neck, or they've gone and they've stabbed some other kid, you know what I mean, or one of my other partners. So it's that kind of, you constantly have to be vigilant and be on your toes in them situations. But with respect to that, it's that internal kind of pure, it's just fear. It's complete fear for Eric. His world's falling apart there. Do you know what I mean? They know where his lad is and they can get him.
We ended up shooting that scene quite early because we had a COVID. We lost Sean and James and Jack because of COVID, so we moved all of Stephen's stuff earlier. But one of the great things about doing that scene early was Stephen was really good at recognizing his strengths as a character, as Eric, and he was very quick to say, look, Kadif is a big lad, tall, physical, and obviously knows that the ending, he has to take this guy down and to work with the stunt team on that. But little things like, we had an improv moment where when Sean gets let out of the cell, the first night cell, and they walk to the room, that scene in the scripts ends, they let Mark out and he goes, right, you like with me. And we added, because Stephen was really keen to not shy away from the physicality of Kadif, we had him unlock the other prisoners, and then they just improv this moment where, Kadif steps out of the first night cell and Stephen just threw this ad-lib that was, you're right, lad, good to see you again, which we could easily have cut in the edit if Jimmy didn't like it. But what it did was it created so much that these two Kadif's been in prison before, Stephen's known that he's been in prison before. So it just, that scene when it comes, there's something really uneasy about it, because you've had this moment where we've played into the physics. And I think what was great about this job was Jimmy didn't mind us playing, because he knew that we could always pull it back. And correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but we always knew we could take it back in that way. But he also didn't mind the actors finding things and embracing what was happening. And it all came from doing that scene, and Stephen being very aware of the physicality and not wanting it to be silly because we hid away from it. It's like, if we're going to have this physicality, let's show it early on and be like, that is the reality of it. I don't know why I'm saying that.
It's a really good scene to look at, actually, because, you know, as Stephen says, it's in the writing. Like, it is definitely. And then, you know, generously, you know, Lewis is saying, well, it wasn't about the directing, it was all about the performance. I think there is an element of direction in that, though, that there is a choice of angle, which comes back to the edit as well. And it shows how, you know, the choice of angles and the edit and so on, everything combines, and that's what makes it watchable. I mean, can't tell you how many times I've seen that scene now, and every time it you know, it gets the hairs on the back of my neck, and I'm paying attention. And I think that the combination of performance, writing, choice of angle, the music that Sarah's put across it, the edit that you know, Sacha's, you know, given it, you can't have just one thing. It's all of those things, and you know, it's having all of those things that makes it electric and visceral in the way that it is.
No, I thought it was brilliant, absolutely, and I love the way you go and leather him in the end, anyway, Stephen. So it's fine. he gets his comeuppance. Got just one other question that's specifically for you and Hannah, Stephen, is. A lot of actors were talking about, you know, when the work's heavy, because you are, you know, you're emotionally like distressed, and like you said, you like to feel it. You don't want to act, you don't want to blag it. You must feel this to keep it authentic. Particularly when you're working with someone you're living with as well. How do you sort of like not take that energy home with you, or do you? And you just have to deal with it.
No, we didn't. Not at all. She's lovely. She's great to have on set. She's so, you know, she's such a gregarious person anyway. And she's got a lovely spirit. And she's got a great laugh, and it's so infectious. She's my missus, and I love her to bits. But that's just that. She's great to be with on set. And she also has this wonderful ability as well to kind of switch it on and do it, and then that's it. Do you know what I mean? Which I've learned to do over the years. But that was it. We'd do it, and then it'd be like, right, what are we gonna have for tea tonight? Are we gonna get a takeaway?
Yeah, you guys didn't hold on to any of the energy and made it really enjoyable for the cast and crew. I mean, even the first scene we ever shot with Hannah was the scene where they find David in the hospital bed, and he's completely beaten up. It was a big first day for Hannah, that, like, to come in and basically do essentially what is the catalyst for, you know, the decision.
Let me find it. Yeah, you should come in. You've got your phone now, haven't you? You should come in on the link now. Right, I'm gonna go now and pass it over to the other one. We'll do a tag team. I've still got it. I'm cleaning up, by the way. She's been out.
You're doing the ironing.
Cleaning. I did all the.
You're doing the ironing.
Well, you can take mine, but my earphones are falling off.
I've got a computer now, you moron.
Oh, go on then. Well, hurry up then.
This is what it's like on set, basically, and then someone says action and they just flip it on.
What would have been more concerning about them not taking it home with them and so on is if they'd booked separate rooms. You know, so as two actors, you know, at the end of the day, oh no, we'll have separate rooms and so on.
But we what are you on about? What are you on about?
I haven't said
we did. We
did. Had separate rooms.
Fucking right.
No.
Yeah. I wanted to put up. Yeah, we did. While we were grafting, we had separate rooms because I'll piss it off because I want to leave the telly on and watch shit, and she wants to get asleep. She's like, right, it's 10 o'clock. I'm in work. I'm going to sleep now, and I'm like, no, not yet. I want to watch it. So we had separate rooms. Yeah.
I didn't know. I'd have been panicked if I'd have known that.
No, not at all. Yeah, we'd have our tea together and we'd watch a bit of telly, or we'd actually go through the scenes together. And then she'd go, right, I'm off, and I'd be like, oh, bed. All right, sound, see you tomorrow. And then I'd watch some shit on the telly, basically. That was it. That was how it went down, do you know what I mean?
Take it home with us.
Oh, here you go. Hannah is here. Let's let her in the room.
I was just saying how Stephen was saying how brilliant you are, and Ross was asking about switching it on and switching it off, and I said that, and Stephen was saying that, you know, both of you don't need to carry any of the baggage, and I was saying, like, testimony to you, you know, the first day, the first scene for you is probably your biggest scene in terms of setting emotionally up the stakes for her, which was finding David in bed. And
yeah, that's right. Like going to the hospital was the first scene, which was it was horrendous, absolutely horrendous. But I think before we even went down onto set, because we knew what was coming, we just created just a little bit of an atmosphere where we weren't just engaging in normal conversation.
Yeah, but I remember it now. But the joy of that, remember the beauty of that was the night before, he fucking come up with a brilliant idea. We went down to Look at the Gap, and he went, "You're not coming on until Paddy was all in makeup and all done."
Yeah.
So that's the other thing, and I know it's a Ken Loach thing as well, isn't it? But it's that kind of what Lewis did, which was brilliant on that day. Remember, we didn't see Paddy, and you didn't see Paddy until Paddy was in the bed. Yeah. So the initial reaction, whether or not that was the one you used, Sacha, which I haven't said congratulations, and mate, I thought you was amazing to you.
Incredible.
I just think it was beautiful. Beautifully done.
Thank you very much.
The editing was fantastic. It was sublime. Yeah. It was really brilliant, honest to God. That energy, that pace and everything, and it was all nice and soft. Anyway, I digress. Yes, but it was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Hannah's reaction initially was the first time she'd seen it.
Which is the one we used. Which was the one we used.
Yes, it is.
Because we did the first take, and Stephen immediately came and found me behind the monitor and went, "We don't need to go again. We do not need to go again."
It was exhausting. We were exhausted. All of us were exhausted. Nobody spoke for about when we had to do a turnaround, when they had to change. Nobody spoke while they were doing it. Because you remember that, Lewis? Nobody spoke.
But I do remember. I remember at one point though. I remember you two just like. And I think it was when you first came down, actually, you were having such a laugh and like you were joking about something like, and it was such a nice energy. And then I remember it changed when like Graham was like, "Okay, Paddy will be traveling down in a minute." And then it changed and it was like, but I remember before that, we had to rehearse it with you guys, with Graham in bed, just so we could figure out how, because the great thing about that organically was Stephen is such a generous actor, as are Hannah. But the night before, Stephen had to go early because he'd not got a scene. The last scene of the day was something with Sean. And I think while we were setting up, we went down and looked at it together. And that's when he was like, I think I'd come here and we were just talking about it. And it was then when, he was saying, we know Paddy, I think it will be quite real for us, that organically we were like, well, would it be beneficial if we don't bring Paddy in the makeup until the first time? And it was an organic thing. It wasn't me going, I'm a genius. No. It was kind of an organic thing that happened from conversation. And I think the problem with TV is you just don't often have time to have the conversation. And it's about making yourself
to the point where, sorry to interrupt you, but even to the point where when we're in the makeup chairs in the morning, they kind of kept us a bit separate, Paddy and I, and Paddy, Stephen and I, so that we didn't see that. We acknowledged each other, but didn't acknowledge each other. And then they just got on with the work, their fantastic work they had to do with the aesthetics, which was amazing because it was just so important for particularly for me, anyway, as an actress, to see that for the first time, to just see that, to have that first time reaction, to see that. And it was genuinely real, emotive tears of just hurt and
despair. You went straight away, and that was, and you see, and what it was, and I love what Tom said before, and that's a very similar analogy to what I kind of use and how I think about the job and the environment as a whole. Without any piece of the jigsaw, you don't have that picture. So each piece is integral to that picture. Do you know what I mean? And it was such a beautiful atmosphere for us to walk into. And I remember that you could have heard a pin drop when we did a turnaround.
When we had to do a turnaround, everyone was so respectfully.
And the energy was. It was like the energy just stayed in that ether of that room because look, fucking everyone, and they're all lovely. You got like big burly fellas in shorts lifting big lights and all that. And all of that. Well, I'll see you on Tuesday or Sunday. She's a fucking cash. But it was like just pure silence as they were moving things. It was like because everyone knew that it was a really important moment, and everyone wanted to give it their best as well. Do you know what I mean?
And I think they felt it.
Yeah, everybody felt the emotion of it all.
That's the funny thing. That's the response. A lot of the response that I'm particularly getting on social media is the response from parents.
Yeah,
parents that are saying, "I held my wife's hand for 3 hours when I watched this." That was one of the comments that I had, because people are they're thinking about their own child, aren't they? Ultimately, that's what they're thinking about, and that it could so easily happen to them. No matter how good a parent you are, it just takes one silly, stupid mistake.
There's something I need to confess that I don't think we've ever spoke about in all the press on this, and that is that Stephen directed one of the best scenes in the show. No one's actually ever commented on this. We've never spoke about it, but
it's an exclusive.
The scene where where Eric and Sonia are in the car coming back from the visit in episode 3, which obviously on Sunday, where they're coming back and he's driving and she basically turns around to him, and you've had these scenes where you've never really seen father, and she says, you never hug him, and he says, we just don't do that, and she goes, yeah, but now he's in prison. And then it hangs. That was Stephen. I didn't direct that. Stephen directed that.
He was a nightmare of a director, can I tell you?
Yeah.
Oh, so demanding, honestly.
I didn't direct it.
Yes, you did.
We spoke about what we were.
No, Stephen directed it. He's been, Simon was there as well.
Simon,
Stephen, it was just a really joyous, collaborative energy throughout, I think, which obviously stems from the top, from beyond me. It stems from Tom and Jimmy. If Jimmy had come in and Tom had come in and, had to pull me into a meeting in the first week and been like, you don't change a word, you don't change the blocking, this is what it is, this is it. And by not doing that, we all respected the work. Jimmy's scripts was stunning. Yeah. And we didn't ever want to change them. But sometimes organically, you have to rewrite things a little bit because you have to respond. And I think I said at the start of this, I feel like there's a process missing in TV where, people understand that you write it and you re-edit it and tell the story again, but they don't want you to respond on the floor. And I think in film, that's still very, very much the free rewrites of the script, the writing, the rewrite. And this felt very much like we didn't do much of it, but where we did do it, we were given license and we were allowed to respond. And that made you even more respectful of the work and the words.
Yeah.
That also goes back to choosing the right team to work with. And you select a team that will work well together. And obviously we've worked together before. And you trust one another, and there's no point in hiring actors as good as Hannah and Stephen and the rest of the cast, and then telling them how to do it in a way that we can't imagine because we're not there with them. So you hire good people and then trust them, and if you don't have that trust, then you've hired the wrong people, or you're a control freak and you really shouldn't be doing the job because it's not all about you.
No, amazing. Honestly,
Ross, do you have any questions for Hannah now she's on? Or Steve, just because I'm aware that you had 1,000 questions, not for any of us, but for Hannah and Stephen, and now we've kind of got them.
Hello. I need to say hello again because I've not seen you for a while. But
how's it going? Are you all right?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, very well. This is a nice way to spend a Friday afternoon. Very different for me, so I appreciate your time. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the questions we've covered a lot in terms of performance. We were talking. Stephen took us through sort of his process and approach to script work, Hannah, and so did James and Jonathan before. Everybody's so different when it comes to this, though. So really, just for you, like, when you get a script as emotive and as powerful as this, what are the first few steps that you go through to go, right, how am I going to tackle this, just from your own perspective?
I'm a bit strange in the sense that I don't like looking at it very much, which for some directors is an absolute dream. For some directors is a bit of a nightmare.
Right.
But I don't like, especially something like that, because I like to get the crux, obviously, of the scene and what's happening in the scene, and obviously the important bits of dialogue. But I don't rehearse it myself. I don't look at it and rehearse it at all. I look at it a couple of times, and then through the rehearsal process for me, when we're on set, that's when it kind of starts clicking with me.
Yeah, but you know it before you get there.
Obviously. Yeah. But I'm saying I like to make it a bit more organic. I like to feel
play with it when you're there. Well, you need to know it before you get to play with it, don't you?
Yeah, but I'm just...
Exactly.
Are the rehearsals...
spent 20 minutes saying about, make sure you know your lines, right? And you're just like saying,
no, that's not what I'm saying.
Let's come and have a laugh when we get there.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying learn your lines, but be ready to play.
Yeah. And is that happening exclusively on set, or is it tempting for you to, obviously living with each other, going, can we run it one more time? Can we run it one more time? You know, you're rehearsing in the living room, or you're leaving it to set?
We didn't over rehearse it, did we?
But sometimes you'd come with ideas, though. Sometimes you'd come with an idea that you go, can we show you something? We've
ideas, but not go through the scene, but not start right. Let's do the scene. Ideas for it, but never play. We never played the scene.
No, but them ideas only come from discussion and going through it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
But we didn't physically sit there and do the scene.
We talked the words through. We read the words through.
Yeah, see, I like to read it, but I don't like to get up in the living room and start acting it out. It just doesn't feel right. I need to be there on the set with the director, with everything that's happening around, physically, visually, everything, because it just adds naturalness. It just adds that, that moment, being in that moment. If you think about it too much, you're not in that moment. Just be in that moment.
Well, we should do that when I ask to go through sides with me and stuff, and I'll do it. And then you fucking give me a look and go, "What, are you going to do that?" I'm like, "No, I'm only just doing it now." You're like, "Oh, well, I wouldn't." Then
sometimes you make wrong choices, love. Do you know what I mean?
I wish you need to be told. Same benefit.
You do you, and I'll do me.
Okay.
I love it. Let's have a look at other questions for you, Hannah. Let's have a look what we've not that we've not covered. A lot of people were talking about that scene actually, where you are. There's a lot of silence in the scene where you are in hospital. I can't believe that was the first scene that you did. I mean, that's a lot of pressure, that, isn't it? I mean, what are you using? We spoke about like emotional recall before, and people taking themselves to dark places to stir up emotion that they can use. And we had a really interesting question from someone in the community that we asked Jonathan and James before that you could both answer for us actually, where this guy chooses to revisit, for him to stir up emotion in his acting work, to revisit dark times in his life. And he's experienced a lot of loss in his life, some real family tragedy, and also a spell of time that he spent in prison as well. And he'll take himself back to access those emotionally, to sort of like, bring up tears or like, heightened emotion. But he said, sometimes I feel really guilty about, in inverted commas, using these experiences that were so tragic in my life in my work. And also he has a fear that if he uses them so often, he'll become numb to them and they'll stop working. So do you guys ever use that in your own work? Like, were you picturing your own son in the bed and to bring up those emotions, or like, how do you navigate that world really?
Yeah, you of course you've got to pull on your own experiences. You have to. It's there for you. You should need to be able to use it. It's important to be able to use it. It's important to know when to stop using it in the same sense as well. But if you can tap into those experiences and emotions that you felt to help your character, to help get your character to those points, then absolutely you should use them. But it's equally as important to the minute you've done it to snap out of it.
Yeah.
Because we're only pretending. You're only pretending. We're only pretending. That's all we're doing.
That is true. Yeah.
But for me, yes, I imagined that it was Alfie lying in the bed before I went in, just to get that feeling, that emotion before I walked in the room, to feel that it would be him, so that when I saw Paddy in the bed, that emotion just came out. So yeah, you do use it a lot, really, don't you? But not to the point where I think it should. Oh, it's a tricky one to say. Not where it should start becoming, help me out, like an issue with your. Don't be thinking about it to the point where you can't, find that line between reality and not reality. You need to be able to have that cut-off point. Otherwise, I don't think it's very healthy. I don't, and personally, that's my personal opinion. I think
because the dichotomy that like the push and the pull that he was feeling is like. Almost he felt guilty about not wanting the wound to fully heal, so he could go back and prod it to sort of access it when he wanted. And he's like,
I think you have to be careful. I think you have to be careful. You have to be completely there's ways of trying to talk about it, and you have to have an understanding of it to be able to get you into a certain point or a certain place. There's times in our life where we all may think, or we may use, like you say, for emotional recall. But that's the tap of it then. And then you use what's happening in the scene to let you to be affected by what's happened in the scene.
Because otherwise, you're playing yourself. You're playing emotion from you.
Emotion that you've got from back then,
rather than you're not being in the moment.
You're right.
It's bringing it back to that being in the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
So in that respect, all you should be doing in that emotional memory recall, my understanding of it is to think about it and allow it to be that thing that begins to. It's like lighting a firework. You know what I mean? It's that initial spark of like, oh shit, yeah, I remember. Oh, that was horrible, that wasn't it? Oh, okay, now let's go and see what happens in this scene.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not. Don't let it become detrimental to your own mental health.
That's a lovely analogy. It's using sparks to start the fire. Don't just pour a load of petrol on it straight away. Just using the sparks to start the fire, and then it'll come if it comes, and it'll come organically from those sparks.
And then in that respect, it's not yours. Do you know what I mean? It's not your feelings. They're not your emotions. Then they're emotions that are embellied. What's the word I'm looking for? Embellished on you as the character. They're not Stephen. It's not Stephen when he lost his nana. Do you know what I mean? At the age of 14.
Yeah.
Because that's in there somewhere, and occasionally that goes off. But I'm not going to use that every single time I need to get upset. Do you know what I mean? Because then it'll be a 14-year-old creation of me being upset with that. Do you know what I mean?
But also, then you need to keep that for you.
For me, yeah, that's mine. That's what makes me. That's the essence of me.
Yeah.
Whereas I need to find out what happens in that moment with that character in order for that to be true there and then.
The biggest problem we had on this, I think, was the reverse of what we're talking about for Hannah and Stephen, because obviously they can draw on so much naturally because they, not only do they know Paddy well and have supported Paddy in his career and they have an affinity with Paddy who's lying on the bed, they've got the same kids that they could, but me and Stephen had so many chats, and also some of the notes Stephen gave Hannah in the car scenes that he did for me. Actually, it was holding back the emotion, and me and Stephen had this massive chat about how in the van at the end Eric wasn't going to cry. It wasn't going to be something that happened. And we did that scene. We went in a real sweatbox and we filmed that shot, and we just let the camera roll, and we just had a couple of people shouting some stuff that weren't the people on the thingy. And it came naturally. And sometimes these things came that we didn't want them to come because you're holding on to so much of the reality of what you've done. And the phone call, we never intended.
The sound that came out and over the ironing board, but that was Hannah started to come out a little bit. So you were right, pull it back. It was hard.
Oh no, I think the phone call is perfect, but I think you pitched it perfectly. But ironically, me and Stephen have made a specific choice not to have Eric cry in the sweatbox because we were worried it would feel indulgent, and maybe not indulgent, but that Eric was kind of like, he's crying on his own. But actually, it was pitched so perfectly, and we obviously had takes. We could have used a bit where he didn't, but we felt that it was so organic and beautiful, and it felt vulnerable. And the first time you've seen him really accept his vulnerability. And actually, the thing that we had on this was that we kind of kept finding these things because I think Hannah and Stephen were able to, easily evoke things from each other that would an embarrassment of riches for me and Sacha.
Absolutely.
Because actually often it wasn't struggling to find the emotion; it was going into them and going, is there a take where it doesn't come so easily? Which I've never been in that position before. I've never been in a position where I'm asking actors to sort of try and hold it back
a bit,
because it's often so hard to find it. But the two of them were able to find it in ways that enabled us to find other unique ways and things of and it created an incredible edit for us, didn't it? We were spoiled in the edit, Sacha, weren't we? Of really choosing moments to sort of
No, it's and that's what I wanted to say as well, is that honestly, waking up every day and not only having brilliant writing and brilliant script, but being greeted with performances from both of you of that caliber, it's like it's truly a joy, because it's like it gives me a great field to play with, and it's not about trying to sort of problem solve. It's about how can I just take this and support it and make it even greater if possible. So for me it's extraordinary to watch both of you work not only together but independently in those other scenes.
I could tell that he liked it, because whenever I text him to be like, how's it looking, is it good, if he thinks he's okay, but he must have felt so much pressure, he would never ever say, yeah, it's great, because he was so nervous that he didn't want to underserve the performances. He was always playing it down on the text. Whereas I know if he's been a bit more confident, I don't know, he doesn't feel the pressure in the same way.
Yeah.
Awesome. That phone call, you took the words out of my mouth there. I was literally just about to come to that. There is so much power in not crying, in terms of holding back emotion in our lives as human beings. This is what I think a lot of actors fall into the trap of, and I've done this in the past. I try not to do this now, where a lot of scenes where you do have to get emotional, like in real life, the hardest thing to do is not to cry in front of people. That's really what you don't want to do. So I think sometimes seeing somebody on breaking point is way more emotional than it is actually seeing them let it out. And there's a moment, Hannah, between you and Stephen, where we see from his perspective, just as he puts that phone down, he goes, look, I've got to go. You get that natural thing. You know what we do as human beings, where you're just about to break and you make that sudden jerk, like kind of like, it's really difficult to sort of describe. It looked to me like you absolutely felt it, Steve. We were just talking about the phone call where you put the phone down and there's just like a blink of an eye, in your right eye, sort of like as you sort of jolt away, because you were just about to break, and that's why you had to put the phone down. Were you two speaking to each other, or was someone reading in for you on those lines? Because it was so authentic. Like, were you actually on the phone, or like, how did you do that?
I was on the phone to you when
No.
When I was it was played over the speak. You had it over speak.
No, we didn't. We had it all ready. Hannah had recorded it for me, and we had it lined up. And Stephen just walked in, and we were ready to go, because we were in a place where and he just walked in and he put the folder down that we've discussed. Yeah. And he just said, if you're ready, let's do it. And I said, do you not want us to play Hannah back? He said, she's in my head, just go now. And we did one shot, one take of that close up, one shot, one take. And he just did it. And he said, we did it last night, and for some reason this morning it's there, just go. And we literally just stepped in, turned over, did it, and then did the wide, and then moved on. But the reason for that was because if Hannah would have been there on set, we would have probably pulled her in, because that's what happened when Hannah did the call. Stephen was in the house doing other scenes, so Stephen basically sat in and read in. Yeah. Or I think even called. Did you call him?
We did call.
Yeah. But that was that kind of thing. Again, it was that setup. We knew how it was going to be set up, and we went for it. And because we did that night before, we did just talk through it. I had the tone of it. I was ready to do it. You know what I mean? And then it is that kind of thing. It's the situation of where he is. He's a prison officer. He's in a police fucking holding cell situation. He's about to go into a cell, and it takes every ounce of his being for him not to break down there and then, because there's people around as well. So his ego would kick in a little bit. You know what I mean? That masculinity of keeping hold of it. It's like, no, I'm not gonna let these fuckers. I'm not gonna break in front of these. You know what I mean? Because
it's worth saying that on both sides of the call, though. I think there's a real thing where people think a director kind of has these massive conversations with actors, and that I own that performance somehow. Well, actually, like in both those calls, there's very little conversation. Like Stephen and Hannah both were on the set, and we said what we talk about is, how do you want to set it? Do you want me to play Hannah back? Do you want me to call Hannah? And Hannah, with Hannah, it's like, do you want him to be in the room? Do you want to call? That's the conversation and logistic conversations of how you service the performance. We didn't ever sit there and go, I think on this line, I think this is where she reflects about this. And I think there's a real conception of what directing is. And it's like, actually what it is it's about the logistics of how we service it, letting them do it. And then if there's any conversation, it's how did that feel? And an acceptance and an honesty sometimes of saying, I didn't quite feel it. And these may be the reasons I didn't quite feel it. Okay, well, let's maybe lose that. Let's try that. What if Stephen's in, and trying, and we never did that on these two calls. And annoyingly, the one scene that I wish we'd kept in, but we couldn't because we were fighting the channel on the overlength nature of episode 3, was there was a beautiful shot of Hannah, of Sonia sat on the sofa, after that call just sat so still and mourning what had happened, and it kind of just drifted off her slowly and found the photograph of Eric and David, which is actually Stephen and Grace, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
And but because we'd had that photograph in Ep 2 and we were fighting the over length, we had to lose it. But it was that for me was more powerful from the call, and I remember doing that. I remember giving you a big hug after that, because just that scene that moment felt so raw and so real. But again, that was just something we found, and yeah.
No, it was wicked. Absolutely amazing. We're nearly at the 2.5 hour mark. So
we should probably round it down.
We'll start wrapping it up. I have got a couple of things to ask you. The first one, Tom, maybe for you, loads of people have gone, well, there could be like a second series here. Like, is that something that is Jimmy going to write another one, or is it over?
No, I think we always started off by knowing that it was going to be this story, and I think in many ways it's been such a perfect experience. It would be wrong to try and recreate that with a different team in some way, and I think sometimes you've got to have the confidence in your own situation to say that's the best it could ever be. Obviously we want to work together, all of us, in different forms on other things, and we will do that. But no, let's park time. It is what it is. We're delighted with it, and that was always the intention. I think we should have the confidence to say that is the case.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. I don't backyard box, killed in the top corner. That's it. Walk away.
Always a football analogy. Always a football analogy.
Top in. Thank you very much. Nice one. The amount of people that have gone to me, it's too short. We want more. It's not. Is you going to do it? It's like, no, that's it. It was what it was.
Just leave it.
With a society of over-consuming, but this just went, fucking have that. There you go. He's all binged it like crackheads anyway. Do you know what I mean?
Lewis sent me the links on Vimeo like before it aired. We were going to do this a bit earlier, and I said, I'll watch one each night, mate, and I'll have it done by Wednesday. I watched one quite late at night, went to bed. First thing the next morning, I was like, I need to see 2 and 3. I've got to see where this goes.
And people pulled all-nighters on a school night.
I mean, man did.
Yeah. It's so good, honestly. So good. The other thing, just to kind of wrap up, I noticed it's been getting quite a bit of press around opening up conversations around like how actually effective prisons are in this country at actually sort of like rehabilitating people, or like I noticed Owen Jones, I think, wrote an article I've got here. It says his headline was, "Will it take a BBC drama to finally start a rational debate about Britain's prisons?" I mean, do you think like what have you seen around that, and is that anything that you've been involved with? Has anyone approached you and like mentioned any of this stuff? So go, actually, it's such an accurate representation. Maybe we have to look at how prisons are serving people.
I think again, this is one of those areas that you dream of. That when you're telling stories, you want to make it entertaining and you want to make it engaging and dramatic and all of those things. Sometimes there is the opportunity to possibly change opinions and to question what society gives those in most need and or doesn't give. And I think that beautifully this is starting to challenge the perceived wisdom on being tough on people. I think we're failing people in need in many ways across society. And as a piece of entertainment, if we have drawn attention to that, that's the sweet spot for me.
It made me go on, Lewis.
They're clearly doing a better job in Scandinavian countries at rehabilitation and the institution. It feels a little bit like, and I think Jimmy's, that's what the piece reflects, is that our system has been failing for years and nobody's quite prepared to accept that and shake it, and has any ideas on how to shake it up. But it does feel like it would take a good Home Secretary to go over and look at how things are done in certain Scandinavian countries and start to adapt and move forward. We're building new prisons all the time. Like, now is the time to reflect and think about how we create a system that doesn't feel like I think Jack's character is, I think Daniel is someone I think we all recognise in terms of someone who goes into the system and becomes a product of the system. And I think the rest of his life, regardless of when he gets out for the particular crime he's on, he will be a reoffender and he will be back there because of certain circumstances. And I'm not saying he shouldn't be in prison for the crime he committed. I think he should, but what we don't want to do is fail them beyond that and lose them, permanently, because then when we do get them back into society, they're causing other issues that we need to. So I think it's great to see that there's a debate about it, and it was never my intention. I'm sure Jimmy just wanted to put out his opinions and express his concerns about it, but it's great that other people can now take it from us. I think Stephen says it best, we're really lucky that we get to go into the homes of people for an hour a week. And what happens to it then is nothing to do with us, really. We just have to make the work and then sit back and let people consume it and talk about it and take it. But it's great. We're so fortunate that those conversations are happening.
Yeah, what a great legacy for the piece if it can make an impact there. And the very last question is a personal question for everybody. I want pure honesty on this one, right? The website that I run and the YouTube channel that this will go out on is called Act On This. It's all about actors basically getting information like this, learning, and then going out and acting on this information to go and do things in their life, achieve things within their career. With this piece being called Time, right? I've got a little question, a little spin on time, right? If your time was up, we'll go each in turn. Sacha, straight away to you. If your time was up now, what would you regret having not done yet in your life or career? Bit of reflection to go, right, maybe there's something I'm holding back on. For me, I'm writing a sitcom, and I've been writing this sitcom for 4 years, and it's been on the shelf, and I know I need to get my act together and just get some of this shit made. So, like, Sacha, if your time was up, what would you regret not having done yet that now you might be the catalyst to go and do it?
In my career or in my life, because it's a slightly different take.
Whatever you're willing to share. Career. Go.
Yeah. I don't really want to be sharing my life regrets.
Okay, stick to career.
I mean, I think honestly, it's the same thing I try and do every year. I just want to keep doing great work with great people, and I think you can put incredible pressure on yourself to be like, I need to be working on this budget film and I need to be in this guild or I need to be in LA and Hollywood, etc. And it's like, I think I'll look back on my life happily if I am like, okay, I've done work that I'm incredibly proud of that reflects who I am as a person. I've been able to be creative with it and work with also incredibly talented individuals.
Yep.
If I could do that every year until I die, my life will be perfect.
You've won. Well, you're doing it. You're doing it, mate. So, happy days. You've got to keep up the hustle. Lewis, yours is probably something to do with Marvel. I know you want to do that, but I noticed in the cells there was Marvel drawings on the walls. Was that your idea?
No.
It's a little nod.
No. There's a little anecdote about that. I don't even know if I'm allowed to tell this, but I'm going to. Anna told me recently, the designer, that the guy that draws those is the guy that draws the Flanimals characters for Ricky Gervais's book. And I was really nervous when I saw them because I was like, "Are we allowed these in here?" And apparently we were. Because they're drawn, they're fine. No, I can't. I wish I could. Lots of people. I kind of regret admitting this. A lot of people assume that was me, but that was actually our designer. And I was really impressed by the fact that there's like rhinos in there and the characters like that, because like it wasn't like kind of so straightforward. But no, I wish it was me, but no, that was our brilliant designer. And we talked about the fact that Bernard was an obsessive, so he drew, but I never was like he draws Joker or anyone specifically, or Rhino or whoever.
Yeah.
Mine kind of relates to Marvel, I suppose. I think I used to be like in the same thread as Sacha. I think I used to beat myself up really badly about, I was going to make a feature by 25. I lost that. And ironically, that was a prison film. And then I was up by 30, I want to make a film. And by 35, I'm going to be doing American and making Marvel, and you put these sort of slightly, they're not unrealistic, but they're slightly
lofty.
Yeah, ambitions that actually what I was used to do is I think like Sacha was saying, like I used to beat myself up about the fact that I wasn't there or there or there or there. And I think having kids, and I think since Des, really, and sort of the experience of making something that I'd been involved in for so many years. And I think I'm at a place now where, like Sacha, I just want to make good work, and more importantly, I want to work with people that I enjoy the process of making stuff with. And that's and I think a lot of that is taking the weight off beating yourself up about achievements, and especially awards and things like that. It's like, I think we can put false false promise and aspirations into things that don't mean as much. As the actual important thing for me now is I want to work with people like Stephen and Tom and Sacha and Hannah. Like, I want to work with people where I enjoy the work and I feel like I'm being challenged creatively by people I trust, and that's the most important thing for me now.
Yep, nice. I love it. Tom, what's the big thing for you then? Something that you've not done yet that you know you'd regret not doing?
I don't know whether I've not done something. What I want to be moving forward is I want to be more authentic, and I think that there have been times and situations in my life where I've tried to be what I think other people want me to be.
Yeah.
And I think increasingly I just want to be myself a little bit more, and have the opportunity to be that.
Nice, excellent. Stephen, what have you not done? You've done everything, mate. I don't know. I've no idea. It's probably a pointless question, really.
Yeah, that's the journey we're all on, isn't it, Tom? More authentic as ourselves.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you then, Stephen? How could you be more authentic?
Just in the genuine everyday to-dayness, I suppose. You know what I mean? Be true to myself. I love that, Tom. Yeah. I think mine, and it comes from pushing a little bit, and people like Lewis saying, but I'm not saying anything, but to direct at some point, I think.
Ah, wow, okay.
He would be an amazing director. And I mean, any actor that's worked with him, not just because he understands actors, but I think he understands the whole process. I mean, what I'd love to see is Hannah produce a Stephen Graham piece.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Because they are, you hear people say they're the dream team. Anyone that's worked with them would say so. But Hannah's understanding of story and producing, and what I mean by producing, and Tom will vouch for this, is it's the first time I've ever worked with somebody as an actor who has an EP credit, who was so involved in creating the atmosphere and helping me and Tom and Simon, bring it together. And I think that if Stephen takes that into his directing, I think, I think it will be. I'd be really excited and would support him in any way he wants.
It's worth seconding that. That credit was earned on a number of levels.
Ringing Sue Johnson and begging her to do it. I mean, there's a whole list of things.
Yeah, there's a whole list. There are so many things. He was as good as any of us in that role.
Thank you very much.
Amazing. Well, this has just been phenomenal.
Hannah!
Oh, Hannah, yeah. What's Hannah's thing?
Hannah! What's yours?
A regret?
No, it's not about regret. Fucking hell, she was ready to unload a load of shit on me there. She was like, I had life ones, and looked at me as if to go, yeah, you're my biggest regret. That's what I was expecting.
Almost more ambition-wise.
To be the headliner at Glastonbury, is that one?
That could
potentially,
be one.
Could be, yeah.
What, a one-woman play at Glastonbury?
Yeah, I regret never running on stage at Tina Turner at Woburn Abbey when I was 14. Give them a chance. That's what I've regretted. There you go.
But what if you was to do something now? Anything that you would want to do? Like, that's what the question is. Is that if your time was up, let's say,
right?
Is there anything that you not necessarily didn't do, but anything that you would aspire to do that you haven't yet done?
Is there a part in a film or a remake or something you wanted to, like a character that you wish you could do, or something you could produce,
as I said, direct, which you bully me into, and so was he.
Bully you into
a little bit, yeah. Saying you'd be good at that, so absolutely, possibly that.
No, I can't think of anything
that you'd want to do.
No, quite happy with me.
You're right.
That's good.
Maybe write something. I've had lots of ideas in my head for many years. Maybe write something. It's something I'm always saying that maybe I should write it, and I've never done it. So you're right. Right.
There we go.
Yes.
We got it.
Well, that's your homework. We want to see that. You know,
written by Hannah, directed by Stephen. That's what we want to see. Produced by Tom.
Edited by Sacha.
Good joy.
Well, that's only if I'm not working and he's available.
Look how quick he did that. No, wait a minute. He just went, hang on, shit, no, that's all my magic team. No.
No, you can have them. But not yet. You can have them. You can have them.
Amazing. I want a line in it. I'll be there knocking around somewhere. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. This has honestly been like absolutely amazing. I'm going to edit this. I'm going to get this out for those people who I want to know those people who have actually watched this the whole way through. If you are like, I think we're 2 hours and 35 minutes or so into this. What's the magic word that they've got to tweet us if they've seen the whole thing? What should we have for them? Time.
No, because people will tweet that anyway.
Time's up.
I'd put numbum.
Time's up. There you go. Hashtag time's up. There you go.
Right. Like that's a different movement.
Oh yeah.
God, yeah, you're right.
I wouldn't suggest that.
Yeah, you are right.
Hashtag numbum. If you've done
numbum. That's some different movements as well.
Yeah. Right. Well, I've numbum.
That's what I want to be part of.
If you have got through the full 2 hours and nearly 40 minutes, tweet us. I will leave all our Twitter handles in the comments below. Tweet us, hashtag numbum. Make sure you do go and watch Time. The final episode is going out live Sunday, the 20th of June. You can get it on iPlayer, though. How long's it got left on iPlayer? It's quite a while, yeah?
Like 90 days.
Yeah. Oh,
but watch it in the next couple of weeks. So when the EP3 viewing figures come out for the whole series, we
want the viewing figures now.
No, we want like 12 million people to watch the full series by a week on Sunday.
Yes,
definitely. I've got at least 12 million in this community, so it's fine. We'll sort that out. I've got about 10,000 really, but we're working on it.
So what is it? Sunday, the final episode this Sunday coming?
Yeah.
Okay.
How do you not?
He knows that, really. Don't worry. He knows that.
I was just saying.
Is it 9 o'clock, Stephen, on BBC One?
I think so. Yeah.
This Sunday.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, this Sunday. Yeah.
Sunday.
This Sunday. Go and bloody watch it.
Father's Day Sunday. Yeah.
It's,
that's right.
Yeah. No, it is an absolute masterpiece. Everybody, go and watch it. Tweet us. Spread the love. Show these guys how much we appreciate spending this time with us. I get everybody to do this. Everyone's done this bar. You actually, Hannah, you've done it before. Stephen, you might not remember, but I have a little. When I did the vlog, you and Jonas were on the end with Phil when we did behind the scenes of Boiling Point. Tom, you've done it before. The catchphrase is "Bye for now." I give a little countdown. 3, 2, 1. You look at the camera. You go, "Bye for now." Everyone has to do it.
In an Alan Partridge kind of manner.
The only way you can do it.
Honestly, tip of the day, Hannah, don't throw water on a chip pan fire. It'll quite literally take your face off.
Potato catch.
I'm 36. No, I'm 42. My girlfriend's 36. But what did he say? That's 12 years. No, I've got that wrong. I'm 48. My girlfriend's 32. That's how many years? I can't. Oh, I've ruined it. But
it was so good.
You had it so good there.
I've definitely got some more. What else does he say?
You say, murderer, you killed my son.
Absolutely. I like a man who knows who he is. You know, ice white socks, ice white trainers, and a blue Mac. I'm Alan Partridge. I love a bit of Alan. I want to go and see him, but I think it's about £117 a ticket. So if anyone knows Steve Coogan, gets a couple of comps. I'm well in there. Right, we digress. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. It really means the world. Thanks everybody for watching. Hashtag numbum on Twitter. We will see you next time for more. If you're an actor, come and join this community. actonthis.tv. You will get a chance to take part in Zoom calls like this, where you can actually be on talking to amazing people like these guys every single week. actonthis.tv. Get your membership, and we'll see you soon. Until next time, lots of love, everyone. 3, 2, 1. You know what time it is.
Bye now.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.
Yes, I love it.